I wonder what radiator fluid tastes like.
And you don't.
Whoa, no way.
I have a mission for you.
Lay it on me, bro.
I need you to make a retrospective on murder drones.
Okay, guess, but why?
It'd be really funny, trust me.
And how do I know you're not a hallucination made by sniffing radiator fluid?
I guess you'll have to wake up and find out, bitch.
So, murder drones.
October 29th, 2021. Glitch Productions released a pilot episode for Murder Drones, a show created by Liam Vickers and only described as a show about cute little robots that murder each other for reasons. Skull emoji, cowboy emoji. Little did the people behind this episode know that not only would they create a full season of the show, but that it would garner over 100 million views across all of its episodes. However, before we talk about what lies behind the thumbnail, we first need to talk about how we got here. On August 28, 2020, Glitch Productions was officially made as an independent channel branching off from its mother channel, SMG4, which focused primarily on Gmon Machinima videos with internet humor. However, in 2019, they had created a more story-focused show, MetaRunner. They created MetaRunner with a team of animators and writers that they pulled together from different parts of the internet to make a full 10-episode season story following a blue-haired girl named Tari, a character originally conceived in SMG4 as a way to get people to like her before the show aired, in a world where video games are everything. After the season ended, there wasn't much news about a season 2 or any plans for the series, even after the good reception that the show received. However, with the creation of the Glitch channel came with it a movie version of Season 1, which consisted of the entire season smushed together into a feature-length film and a trailer for Season 2. With the release of Season 2, the first influx of fans started to follow the channel and keep an eye on it, without much expectation of what might be happening in the background. However, the production quality had grown dramatically, much to the fans' excitement. In December, Season 2 ended with yet another cliffhanger, leaving fans eager for the next and last season. But before any more information was given about a third season, instead, the channel released another trailer for a different show, Sunset Paradise. Sunset Paradise is a one-season show that grabbed more people's attention, with it featuring yet another SMG4 character that the fans liked a lot. This does mark a point in the fanbase where people realized that Glitch was trying to make a name for themselves in the indie animation world, and they're growing quickly. The season aired and went by without the promise of a second season, but was well liked by fans. This left fans wondering when the next season of MetaRunner was going to be released. 7 months had passed since then. However, after a few months, once again, another show was announced, Murder Drones. The trailer consists of audio and visual clips from the pilot, showcasing a rough idea of some of the main characters, motives, and vibes that the show would be exploring. It was clear to see that this was a huge step away from what Glitch was used to, with the show leaning towards a more darker and more violent plot, different from their more cartoony and down-to-earth stories. The trailer announced the pilot release in the same month as itself, with classic Glitch fans having mixed reactions to it. However, they embraced the change. The announcement of the show brought in a whole other side of a fan base with it. That is from the internet animator Liam Vickers. Liam Vickers created his independent indie show called Internancian Cube, or however you pronounce that, I don't really know, and a pilot for a show called Cliffside. However, he had Murder Drones as an idea he pitched to Glitch Productions, where they accepted his idea and he became the series writer and director. Together, they spent a year making the pilot, having to create a new way to 3D animate and drawing away from the style of animating they were used to in the past. Anyway, we have talked about the background of the creators for a while now. Not really, but shut up. And we will probably touch up on them as we move along. But for now, let's see what the pilot introduced us to the world of Murder Drones. Booting up exposition is flashed on the screen. A voice explains that she is a worker drone along with everyone else around here, created by a company called JC Jensen
in space.
The worker drones were mistreated, but don't worry, they didn't do the whole robot apocalypse that they usually do. Instead, what happened for an unexplained reason other than it was the humans' fault is the planet's core exploded and wiped out all life. Oops. This plunges the world into what seems to be a constant winter. The drones just start living out their lives and creating a society similar to that of humans. However, the company presumably doesn't like this idea and sends murder drones, OMG, the title of the show, to exterminate all worker drones. Also, they are building a spire of corpses around the landing pod they used to get here. Finally, we get to see the voice that's been talking to us, a purple-themed worker drone named Uzi. She explains that the worker drones build a bunker with 3 large doors to protect them from the murder drones. However, she hates this. Uzi is a bit unstable as she threatens her classmates and seems on a constant edge. Even though Uzi plans to use her railgun on the murder drones, it still doesn't work. After turning it on, it glows red and then goes boom. She is then sent to the principal's office by their teacher. Some kids in the hallway snicker at her and run away, while another kid named Thad walks in and starts a conversation with her. We find out that not only is Uzi's dad, Khan, the robot responsible for the creation of the giant doors, but that she has crippling daddy issues. Uzi shares her plans to sneak into the murder drone's hideout, i.e. the spiral, to get the last part she needs for her railgun to work. By this point in the story, it is clear to see that Uzi is different from the other worker drones, in that she is a lot more expressive and dauntless, whereas the worker drones are more sheepish and cowardly. It is now 3 a.m. Uzi's built-in alarm is going off, and it is go time. She takes her dad's master key for the doors, which is a flash drive, and takes off for the master doors. She opens door 1 without much trouble, but on the other side is her dad. He asks where she is going, and after making a snarky comment, she lies and admits that she needs to measure the exterior hydraulic mechanisms of door 1 for a project she is working on during school. After her dad seems convinced enough, she exclaims that she wanted to join the WDF, or the Worker Defense Force. Khan is then convinced and tells Uzi about the bliss of hiding behind doors and gives her the wrench she used to create the door's prototype and put her mother out of her misery after the murder drones got to her. Khan then allows Uzi to go through the other 2 doors and into the outside world. As Uzi walks through the destroyed cityscape, she eventually comes to the murder drone spiral. It is important to note the moon and Saturn-like planets in the sky. As Uzi walks into the spiral, she sees the pod in the middle, surrounded by machine parts. After tossing an arm away, she grabs the piece she needs to finish her railgun. However, a murder drone has returned from the outside. With mechanical wings, it slams into the pod, drinking the last of a worker drone's oil and crushing its head in its sharp, long fingers. As Uzi is trying to form a plan of what to do, she is spotted. Acting fast as the murder drone flies upward, she quickly slaps the part she needs into her gun and prepares it to be fired. However, the murder drone slams down in front of her, knocking her off her feet and the gun from her hands. She regains her balance and gets in a fighting stance. However, the murder drone stabs her hand with its syringe tail that contains nanite acid and tosses her across the room. The murder drone brings out a gun and points it toward Uzi, getting ready to fire, but Uzi gets to her gun first, firing before the murder drone can react. In a burst of green light, Uzi flies backward and the murder drone's head is gone, falling to the ground. However, the murder drone's head immediately begins re-emerging from its torso. Thinking fast, Uzi grabs an arm and smacks the murder drone's head. This, or the whole head being blown off, causes the rebooting of the murder drone to cause an error in its system, and asks in a friendly voice,
"Did you just slap me with that arm?"
Uzi does not identify as a worker drone to this murder drone anymore, instead being replaced with an error. And the murder drone doesn't remember what happened in the last 3 hours. We learn this disassembly drone is called N, and explains how nobody likes him. Uzi tries to take this chance to leave while N has no reason to attack her, but winces in pain as her hand still has a hole in it. N says to just put it in her mouth so that the disassembly drone's saliva gets rid of the nanites and allows healing to the affected area. Uzi insists that they go into the pod, where we see her use N's mouth to heal her hand. Uzi asks about the other members of N's squad, and where he describes 2 other members. The first is V, a seemingly sadistic drone that N has a crush on. However, she does not care for him. The leader is J, who verbally abuses N and makes it clear for her disdain for him. After getting to know the other 2 members, Uzi notices that the pod they are in is actually a spaceship, meaning it could get them off the planet. N laughs it off, saying it's broken, but then Uzi exclaims that the worker drones can help fix it and asks why they are killing them again. N says that he just wants to be useful and they also need their
Warm, sweet
oil to not overheat and die. Uzi brings up the possibility of the company disposing of him and the others when they finish their job. However, before she can get N fully on her side, the other disassembly drones have returned. Uzi runs for it while the other drones explain to N what just happened. N realizes what he did and goes after Uzi. Uzi returns to the bunkers, but before the door can close fully, N stops it from closing. He then opens the doors with Uzi's master key and begins murdering the WDF as they try to retreat. The railgun has finished reloading itself and Uzi can finally use it to defend herself. But when she turns around, N is gone. From behind her, Khan walks in and asks about the hydraulics, only to see all of the dead workers. He immediately asks what Uzi did, but before any more words can be exchanged, N flies down between the 2, knocking them back. Uzi is already aiming once again, and exclaims that he enjoyed their time together, but sees her as a threat to V because of the gun. Before Khan can get out of the way, so Uzi can shoot the gun, N impales her with one of his wings and onto the wall. Uzi drops the gun and tells her dad to point and shoot it, but he instead walks backward and closes the door. Uzi go limps and N feels bad. J and V then come to the bunker. N throws Uzi away before they can see her as they praise him for his achievement. Also, holy smokes, V's got a thick ass. J says branded pens as J begins to follow V into the ventilation to begin killing more drones. N stops her and asks what the company plans on doing with them afterwards. He then recites the plans that Uzi shared with N about rebuilding the pod and escaping the planet. He then feels he has made a mistake in telling this to J, but she reassures him that he finally gave her a reason to deactivate him before putting in a virus that will erase him. He thanks her for looking out for him before collapsing, and J disappears into the vents. Uzi then gets up and walks toward her gun, and apologizes for what he did, and Uzi makes the worst attempt possible to go up. And then guilts Uzi enough to help him not die from the virus using the wrench Khan gave her. Meanwhile, drones are dying and cornered in a storage room. Thad tries to encourage the WDF to try to fighting back, while they cower behind him. But before V can kill him, Uzi and N show up to stop the fight. N confronts J about being mean to him sometimes. Uzi asks N who he wants to fight, and he asks for J, which Uzi says too bad because she wants her. Uzi then throws a pen at J, impaling one of her nanite storage containers on her head. V rushes towards N, preparing to fight, even though N obviously does not want to fight her. With J distracted by her broken thing, Uzi runs up and aims her gun at J, but J brings out her own gun and shoots around her, hitting Uzi and knocking her off balance. J compliments the durability of the pen as Uzi jumps up and kicks the pen back into J's head, right into her yellow eye. A yellow laser appears as Uzi ducks down to avoid it. We see N being thrown against the wall and also dodge the laser as well. V gets ready to fire her weapon, but N is faster to pull his out. However, instead of bullets coming out, little heart bubbles do instead. He screams and says his mind is in a weird place.
Don't read into this!
V fires a missile and we see J pull out her pen in her hand. releasing the EMT to knock out Uzi. V and N are fighting in the air now, finding themselves in a swords-locked stance. When N sees Uzi knocked out, however, he elects V's sword and pummels her to the ground. J kicks Uzi's sword away and begins her quote-unquote best monologue ever .mp3 unquote. Uzi grabs Jay's tail and stabs it into Jay's leg, however, stopping her monologue and causing her to stumble and fall back. Uzi then points her gun directly in front of Jay's head and threatens to shoot if she says another buzzword. She does, and so Uzi kills Jay, and the crowd cheers. V is tied up by N, and the crowd praises both Uzi and N for their fight. In the commotion, Khan clears his throat and steps forward, ceasing all the noise. Uzi calls out to Khan's misjudgment and cowardice, following up with banishing herself from the colony. They then leave through the ceiling, leaving a group of drones to wonder what is going to happen next. Meanwhile, outside, Uzi sits on a car, watching the sun rise while N hides in the shadows, explaining that the sun kills him. Uzi says that she can't wait to kill all humans, with her eyes flashing yellow and then cackling as the camera pulls back into space, revealing 3 other pods headed straight toward Earth. End of the episode. The reception that this episode received was greater than any other video that Glitch had released up to this point. Fans were excited for the rest of the show and made theories and predictions on what was going to happen next and what was in store for the characters. The pilot left a lot of questions and few answers, which is the point because it's a pilot episode. It's supposed to ask the big question, and I don't know why I wrote that part in, because it kind of sucks balls. But you know what, that's okay. This show promised a lot for fans, and excitement for the show was high. However, this excitement would have to wait as the next thing that Glitch was working on was finally complete, Meta Runner, the final season. This season only had 8 episodes, which compared to the previous seasons, which had 10 episodes, made this one shorter. But it was made up for in story and quality. And it was a fitting finale for many of the Meta Runner fans. It would also mark the end of an era for Glitch, where they would complete a season and release episodes every week, changing it up and instead releasing episodes at least on a monthly basis, depending on what was going on. After Meta Runner ended, all that was left for Glitch to work on was Murder Drones, which they did. On October 22nd, 2022, they released the Season 1 trailer. However, unlike the last trailer, it featured footage from episodes 2 to 5, roughly. They announced the next episode in the following month of November, but that the rest of the season is still in production and needs more time to finish. Murder Drones fans were excited to see what was next. As this video goes on, by the way, I will be able to cover the videos more in depth and, better in general, because I'm just going off a script that started off really bad and going better as we go along, as I got better at writing and such. So don't worry, we will catch up with my epic artistic abilities of writing, but for now, suck it up, I guess. A male voice in darkness comments, "We've got to curb our trips to the dump." A flash of light and we see N in a butler outfit, holding a tray with glasses. The man makes another comment about a girl's habit of dressing them up with hair. As he does so, he tosses a glass for N to masterfully catch. He runs off without saying a word, noticeably shorter than in the previous episode. All humans are blacked out, except for yellow circles for eyes, and we are now set in a mansion. It can be reasoned that this is a flashback, obviously. As N turns a corner, he runs into the maid version of V, who is apologetic and seems to hold a lot of feelings for N, just as he does for her. However, J comes in and kicks N, snapping them out of the moment. J then quickly stops her antics to say hello to Tessa, another blacked out human. Behind her steps out another drone, but something is wrong with her. Everything shuts down. And N wakes up like Dracula. He falls to the ground, taking out his claws to examine them. Uzi calls from inside the pod for him to come inside and see what she has found. She examines a mirror inside, and her eye emits a symbol that cracks the glass. V turns and mocks her, while also blowing bubbles. Uzi pins the strange occurrence on the disassembly drones, but V simply says that she has never seen that symbol before. N climbs in and asks what is going on. Uzi slaps on his head a pilot's hat, which gives N the answer of who the pilot was.
I was the pilot? That's awesome!
It was him. V hisses at him, then blows bubbles for some reason. N asks about the immortality of murdering all humans, with Uzi responding with the humans not providing a comms relay and wiping all memories from the drones. Uzi comes to the conclusion that they are covering their tracks in past negotiations. V brings up the possibility of humans programming them to solve a problem and asks Uzi about her story and how she is not the problem, or something like that. I don't know. N tells the group that J was receiving orders from someone, but doesn't know who or how. Uzi dislikes this. Back in the bunkers, the ceiling needs to be repaired. Ladderbot 5000 is going to fix said hole in the ceiling. As he is figuring out the best course of action, however, he hears a noise from around him, then another, then his toolbox gets stolen. He finds an oil puddle where J used to be, and the ray gun by it. Between the two crates he sees a beating chest. The outside looks to belong to J, but the inside reveals biological tissues and bones. A weird heart chest thing comes out, glowing girthily and being generally creepy and mysterious. A text box reading absolutesolver.use. If you can read this, you are in range. Something spooky got Ladderbot 5000. It's a parent-teacher conference at school in the bunkers. The teacher tells Khan that his daughter has been absent from class. Khan treats this as though every teen robot like himself does the same things and assumes that she is popular and into doors. However, she is actually a troublemaker and doesn't get along with anybody. The teacher explains that there might be something wrong with her programming and asks how she is at home. Khan takes this news as a shock and admits he hasn't spent too much time with her, but the conference gets interrupted with a drone asking for assistance. Back outside, Uzi says she's sweaty, and they are obviously preparing for something. Thad is there and gives the ray gun to Uzi, tries to tell Uzi that the colony isn't really serious about the banishment stuff, and tries to get her to come back. When Uzi shows little signs of coming back,
Especially with
The fact I'm too rogue to re-enter society now? I can never return.
Thad brings up recent disappearances in the colony, and how Jay's corpse crawled away. Uzi caves in and decides to come back, and is noticeably not okay with this development. Back in the colony, we see a vending machine. Guy who met Ladderbot 5000 is walking down the hallway when he calls out to Ladderbot 5000. An obvious hologram of Ladderbot 5000 screams in pain before beckoning Tim to come closer to him. As Tim obliges the request, a giant claw hangs down and naps him, bringing him up to the ceiling. A weird eye thing comes down to project Tim, and he and Ladderbot 5000 crack jokes or something. Outside the doors, N flies down with Uzi and Thad. The door creaks open to welcome Thad, but the guard questions N and Uzi's presence. N gives a guard a card saying, "I'm sorry." The guard understandably forgives him and lets them all in. Crime scene. Khan had decided not to come to the scene, so it's just his detective robot. In the background, we see N, Thad, and Uzi peering over and investigating themselves. As the trio leave, every druid in the room vanishes as they were all holograms, and oh shoot dang it, she's dead. Back at the conference, Khan is having a breakdown over his bad parenting. Also, this Russian girl, remember a Russian girl, her name is Doll. Murder drones killed her parents. Also, Big Evil Thing is trying to lure them outside to eat them using another hologram of a person. Pretty epic. Uzi and N are still looking for clues. As Uzi finds not great things, she asks N if this is normal. He says no, and he's
very concerned, but also pretty frightened a little bit.
Then, Thad finds one of those text boxes I mentioned earlier, with a symbol looking similar to the one that was on Uzi's eye. She reads the text and asks if this has something to do with N growing his head back, which N dodges answering. Uzi theorizes that the solver might be some kind of auto-run program to collect matter to rebuild damaged drones. But before she can finish her sentence, N covers her mouth and sees that both men are spooked. A human hand crawls out from the darkness, connected to some sort of black cable. It grabs Thad. They follow the cable with their light to try to find the origin, but find out it's a long cable. N shoots a rocket up to the darkness to find a better lighting method to see what it could be. And it's, oh my Thad gets pulled into the air and into darkness, but N throws a ninja star and slices away the hand. A claw swipes N and Uzi away, grabbing Thad and pulling him away once more. Also, N has a chainsaw for hands now. They run after the screams of Thad into Cryo, only to find a hologram of him screaming and beckoning them over. Uzi and N figure out that this is J, and they throw another ninja star to get Thad back. Thad runs away, leaving Eldritch J with N and Uzi. A robotic voice says that she isn't J after all, and instead is trying to repair the main body as per its directive. They claim they own a program, and says Uzi a hologram of presumably her mother, which isn't great for her. The hologram claims it's unfortunate Uzi doesn't remember them, and disappears. Uh-oh, Robot Thing has Dad now, and who knows what's gonna happen. Program Thing rips Dad in half in front of Uzi and starts eating him. It then goes after Uzi, and it comes back and fires a missile at the program, then tells Uzi to shoot or give him the gun. Uzi is freaking out and gives the gun, but it's actually the program and it throws Uzi away. It then destroys the gun. Suddenly, the entire program collapses and N comes back with his chainsaw hands, but no time to celebrate, the gun is going to explode. N gets Uzi out of there, leaving the program and the newly triggered bomb. N shields Uzi from the blast. The Dad Thing was a hologram, not real. The last camera implodes into a black hole and Uzi asks,
Which parts of that were real?
The hard thing starts to run away as Uzi questions what's real, but then N kills it and it turns into another black hole. He goes to confront Uzi, but she backs away from him, scared. She asks, "What are you things?" Without an answer, N runs away, leaving Uzi to be found by the drones coming closer to the rescue. Uzi comes to her dad and gives him a big hug. He returns the gesture and sends the other drones to look at what happened. He watches as N scurries away. Now we are in a classroom with Doll again. A robot bug crawls up to her while she looks at a photo. Back in time with the program luring the popular student, we see Doll do a Scarlet Witch and crush the door, stopping the illusions and saving the girl's life. The symbol is also on Doll's eye and on her hand power thingy. The illusion frowns at her while Doll covers her eye. She then makes the bug implode and licks its oil. Ew. The picture is one of the murder drones. It's V, and here she is also. N has returned and hasn't told her anything. V is upset about this and asks why she is being punished like this. She then pretends she is still chained up. Uzi lays in bed, staring at her ceiling of insanity. The second episode was adored by fans and won over many who were initially speculatory over the success of the show. Eldritch J became a favorite among the community for a while, and people had so many theories and questions about what was next and what was happening. It was also a huge tone shift from the first episode. Rather than being humorous and having epic battle sequences, it was more horror-centric and introduced new concepts and ability to the show. However, this only helped the show gain traction in the fanbase. People found this refreshing and exciting new way of storytelling. It was important to note an inconsistency that shows up where N in the pilot has a crush on V, but following episodes don't focus on that anymore, or just simply forgot that it happened. Before episode 3 was released, something interesting happened. A new show was announced yet again. This show, of course, was The Amazing Digital Circus, and the first trailer for it wasn't going to be released until almost a year later from this point, but it was officially announced shortly after the second episode came out. While this got Glitch ready with the fans of Gooseworks and getting current fans used to the idea that their favorite Murder Drone production people were making a second show, it's also told the audience that episodes were not going to be coming out as frequently anymore, if more or less a week or two at least. However, this is also due to the rise in quality between episodes. Even from episodes 1 and 2, the quality had increased significantly. It's the day before prom night, or something like that. Drones are going missing for reasons separate from the whole program from before. One drone is running down the hallway and slams into the wall like an idiot. Her glasses shatter and she is rendered basically blind. A red force turns the security camera discreetly. Doll appears on the other end of the hallway, using her mysterious new powers to rip off the drone's hand. She then uses a butcher knife, or 3, to finish the job. Back in Doll's apartment, we see a grisly scene for a drone to be living in. We also see that her powers are something she has mastered and can use it as if it were another limb on her body. She marks off a name off a prom queen list, after greeting herself to her mom and dad, whom are covered in the bug robot thingies. Anyways, Uzi is feeling guilty about her last interaction with N, while the rest of the students are worried about prom and their dates. It's only when Uzi picks up a book she threw that she notices the massive number of disappearances in her student body. She starts laughing like a sane person and takes the posters to plaster onto her wall of wonders. However, when she gets there, it's like it was never there in the first place. Turns out dear old dad took them all and hid them in a closet labeled Nori's Cookie Insane Stuff. Uzi then confronts her dad about the invasion of privacy, which Khan justifies using a maintenancing insane daughter unit user manual. Uzi reassures Khan that if he wants to help, he should stay distant, and while she finds herself out to find N, she nearly tramples over a corpse of a young girl wearing a dress. Khan explains she is grounded from seeing the murder drones and instead hooks Uzi up with classmates to prom while he supervises. Uzi doesn't like this. Also, yeah, that's Doll. Don't worry about that. Meanwhile, back in the pod, N and V examine some dapper clothes off of some corpses. V explains the plan of using pretty clothes to get Uzi to let them in so they can kill the worker drones and Uzi. N says he ain't doing that shit because some fucked up shit is going down and there's no way Uzi wants to see him again. He then questions V about not worrying about what they even are, which V only answers by making N promise that he and Uzi don't look deeper into that rabbit hole. She then brings up the option of freeing her so that they can only eat what they need to survive, just the two of them. Back at Doll's place, her parents are covered up with tarps, explaining that they are sleeping. Uzi notices a bug problem, then prompts herself to leave, which does not seem to be the plan for these two robots. They instead tell her to get ready, and that she will look so cute in that dress. Doll learns to teleport, and Uzi notices all the missing posters in the waste bin. She then backs her way into the bathroom to get ready for prom. N responds to V's offer, saying that if she is hiding something, that they can figure it out together. V takes his offer and slices it across his neck. She then salutes him and flies off to attend prom. Meanwhile, Uzi is finishing up her final touches when she looks at the mirror and her eye goes weird again and cracks the mirror like it dumb. We overhear the plan from one of the popular girls to get off Uzi. That's not what it says. We overhear the plan from one of the popular girls to off Uzi and let V into the bunkers. We learn that the bathtub is bleeding. N wakes up and sees that V's dress is gone, along with V. He then gets ready to leave to stop her before considering the suit. Before hesitating 4 times, he gets dapper.
Dapper N.
Uzi sees the bloody mirrors and hears someone approaching the bathroom, using her quick thinking and excellent Jenga skills. She builds a tower of mirrors to escape from the ventilation shaft. Doll exclaims to herself that she should have seen this coming.
Ой, я должна была предположить, что кто-то сможет убежать через вентиляцию, используя выброшенное зеркало как ступеньки.
Outside, Uzi is running away to presumably find N. However, he appears in front of her and they both act a little awkward before Uzi asks for N's help. N hops on this bandwagon and dubs them dapper buddies, and then Uzi makes a little face at N. Prom night, baby, and the music is bumpin'. Everyone is having a good time, except for the teacher and Khan, as he cannot find Uzi anywhere at the party. But no time for that. It's time to see who the prom queen is going to be. The drone explains that because the entire prom court mysteriously disappeared, the queen by forfeit is V. Before V goes murdery on the drones, she realizes she is being dubbed prom queen and hesitates before the drone stage makes everyone clap for V as their prom queen. The crowd goes along with it and chants for a speech, which V obliges, weighing that she can kill everyone afterwards, and that it's even more sinister. Khan tries to leave the party, but is blocked by Doll's mysterious power. V walks on top of an X symbol, and Doll prepares to unleash an attack onto her, when N and Uzi come to crash the party and stop everything for a second time in the series. Doll, however, continues with the plan, trapping V in place and throwing/killing students for the heck of mass chaos. She then shows V her memory of her killing Doll's parents, explaining why she planned this whole operation. V tries to fight back, to no avail, for Doll's power is just too epic. N and Uzi don't have a lick of sense on what is going on, unprepared with what is about to be going down in just a second. They intervene in the fight, while on the side of protecting V from Doll. This throws Doll off her game, or something, because she just stops blocking the doors and everyone leaves, pushing Khan out with them. Doll asks why Uzi is Doll asks why Uzi is siding with the murder drones, and Uzi responds with whoever is behind this whole thing wants them to fight, and that she isn't dealing with any of it well, but she is done dealing with it alone. Doll doesn't enjoy this topic anymore and decides to aim for N with her shiny blades of fear. N pushes Uzi out of the way and takes a direct hit. Khan sees this and makes an attempt to come help, but then Doll blocks the doors again, locking him out again. Doll throws a steak knife at Uzi, and instead of dodging it, she just stops it by letting it stab through her hand, because of course, why not? Doll tries to do something to Uzi, but cannot because of her absolute solver cannot interact with objects like her. This is where we learn that Doll has been using the absolute solver, the thing that did the thing to Jay. And this scene shows us that the weird eye stuff happening to Uzi has been the absolute solver program. To try to fight Uzi, she throws another knife, which fails. It is important to make clear what the absolute solver actually is. The absolute solver is a program that can be used by certain drones, such as Doll and Uzi. However, it can also do things like what happened to Jay. The origins of the program will be explained in episode 5. Meanwhile, N and V try to put themselves back together. Also, Lizzie, she has a name now, the drone girl from earlier, throws in her own sassy attitude. Uzi and Doll fight for a bit until Uzi eventually gets pinned to the ground. And before being sent to the shadow void of death, N comes in and saves her. Then this happens.
Quit saving me!
They share a moment of bonding or something before N throws her away so she isn't hit with the table. Uzi dodges and deflects all of Doll's attacks before cutting off her bracelet and knocking her down. Before Doll can make another attack, a gunshot rings out and her face has a new hole. It was V. Everyone then gets critical of V for killing Doll when they still need answers and that V has been hiding information from N. Uzi picks up the bracelet, which has a key to Doll's house, of course. They enter the house where they find a ton of discarded drone bodies everywhere. While everyone splits up to investigate, Uzi has a moment of cannibalism temptation, while N finds Doll's parents. Uzi gets her fingers out of her mouth and regroups with the others. She finds a key card on Doll's mom that says Yeva-048. Doll teleports into the room and takes the bullet out of her head to shoot it at Uzi's. However, Uzi finally uses her own absolute solver program for the first time to stop the bullet. If you look closely, we can see that V has pulled out her gun, but is actually pointing it at Uzi rather than Doll. We then see a neck bracelet or something on Uzi's neck, as Doll says that she is sorry for her and runs away like a little bitch.
Don't you dare! I hate it here!
Outside, a worker drone found his misplaced glasses. From the sky, a pod violently crashes where he was standing, with a second one landing right where he ran to. Luckily, he's fine. Down comes the third one, a lot less violently, and a space-suited person backflips out and then slices off the head of the drone. She wields a sword and is a certified technician from J.C. Jensen in space named Tessa, like the one from N's dream, Tessa. She then implies that they have maintenance work to do, and Jay comes out to follow her. They lock the pod and go on their merry way to do whatever they plan to do. This episode marks the moment when Murder Drones started reaching audiences beyond the fans of Glitch and Liam. More people started to get invested outside of the main fan base, with memes and theories being published from different people. Murder Drones was starting to gain better traction within the YouTube realm, and indie animation was starting to get more recognized as actual sustainable media worth watching. A month after the release of the third episode, the first episode trailer was released. This started a trend of episode trailers to gain hype for upcoming episodes, since they were always so far apart. The trailer was titled Cabin Fever _13-13-3071.mov, as in movie, because it's a file, and takes a Blair Witch Project style of filming as a drone running in the woods from something. A flash of something tackles him, and we hear him die while he is eaten alive. In between munches, we hear Uzi giggle softly to herself. The video ends with a release date of early in the next month. Camp 98.7, established in 3002. A bus pulls into the campsite, jumping as if it's a horse, which is pretty awesome. The drone on top tries to calm the bus, and it comes to a halt as they have reached their destination. The doors open as the kids file out and begin examining their campsite. It also seems like Thad and Lizzie are more hanging out together now, and this is also marking the territory of when Thad starts hanging out with Uzi, and their kind of relationship they had before seems to have ended. This might explain Uzi's dejected behavior throughout the episode and why she seems a little bit more of a social outcast than before. Speaking of which, she is the last to get off the bus. As Uzi looks at the two bracelets and at the campsite that awaits her, we get a flashback scene of Khan explaining what and where he was immediately after the core collapse that eliminated all humans. He shows us a photo of him at the campsite and drones all around him, including one that looks like Nori reaching out for his hand. He claims he didn't notice the collars and shows us another picture of a group of drones posing for a picture, many looking like they are having a good time, while one stares blankly off into space. In a closet of crazed drawings, we see a similar name badge for Nori with the numbers 002. Similar at least to the one that we saw in the previous episode with Yeva 048. We then learn that Nori told Khan to
build doors against the coming sky demons. The singularity awakens. Look at this cool ass I can draw.
He says that he isn't who either of them needed, but for Uzi to be safe as she ventures to find answers, and he gives her Nori's bracelet. Back at the campsite, Uzi puts on her mother's bracelet and stashes away the second one. A student
teacher,
calls for a teacher who's on the roof asking what the point of the field trip is.
Ask her.
He responds by
I've
pulling
sat
out
next
a
to you
lawn
for
chair.
years.
Uzi's idea,
Bite me!
which
I
nobody
asked to go
knows
alone.
who she is
He's
for
mad
some
at your
reason.
test scores.
Uzi claims that she wanted to go alone, blaming the teacher for the field trip idea, to which he responds with,
No year-end bonus, no learning.
a kid asks if they were just unsupervised then, to which N and V crash to the ground in uniforms and greet the students as their camp counselors. When the students still play along with the camping trope, however, V shoots one of them, and they all decide they like to be alive. N dislikes this, but moves on quickly to get the students into doing activities. When N makes a clear sign to Uzi to go off and start investigating, and ushers the other students to follow him and V to their bunks, all the students hesitate before finally coming along. When Uzi tries to explain that the disassembly drones are her friends along with some of the other campers, they stare at her and then run away towards the ladder. V takes advantage of this new insecurity that Uzi has and flaunts her in N's newfound populism to rub salt in her wound. N sees Uzi's clearly not having a good time, but when Uzi signals that she is going to start her investigation, he begrudgingly lets her go, and then she is gone. After wandering through a trail, she comes across a strange house with a satellite tower overlooking a frozen lake with an industrial building sticking out of it. She uses an absolute solver to break the lock on the door and enter. She takes an initial look around before finding a dog calendar, with the only event marked as a 2-day period where all dogs were evacuated off the planet in case something bad had happened, and that they were all immortal now thanks to science. Uzi takes kindly to this news. She then hears a noise from the other room, her light catching a strange hologram of someone standing behind a chair. This is Sin. If you haven't watched the show yet, then you don't really need to know because this occurrence is really unimportant. If you have, it's a fun little sneak peek or Easter egg of what's to come. But when you try to look harder, she disappears. A hand moving out of sight right from behind a door frame. She then hears screaming outside, and when she goes to look at what's happening, she sees all the students having fun canoeing on the frozen lake. When Uzi sees N being treated kindly by the other campers, her absolute solver comes out of her control and shatters the window. She throws down her backpack as her visitor says her temp is high. Inside her bag are drone parts and oil, supposedly for her to consume. She grabbed them from Doll's place, of course. Before she can take a sip, however, V interrupts the moment, telling her that this camp would help them find Doll according to Uzi, and for her to do some more investigating rather than spying on the other students. Uzi explains that she is working on it and is just jealous that the disassembly drones fit in better than she does. V tells her to stay distant, since she will be killing Uzi next, and assures her that N makes friends with rocks and will get over Uzi quickly before she dies. V then exits stage up. Uzi goes back to grab her backpack and finds she squished a robo-bug. She then apologizes for her and helps to repair the bug. The bug walks away and crawls into a hole in the floor, which Uzi lifts up to reveal a dead drone and more crazed ramblings. The drone is dressed up in some, sack. So remember that, I guess. She picks some up to examine and finds a bug that glows green rather than red like the rest. Or blue, I guess. The bug then creates a hologram chat box with a frowny face after Uzi tries to squish it. The bug scans her face and accepts her as 002 or Nori, her mom. It then gives options to submit a time card, PTO request, register torture chamber complaint, a discontinued promo offer for End My Suffering, and call elevator. Uzi says elevator, and the bug inputs it to the chat box, which it responds with, please place me on proximity reader, Cabin Fever Labs. While Uzi grows frustrated with the bug, Doll stands behind Uzi before teleporting away. Back at the campsite, the campers are doing archery, which N is exceptionally good at. When the campers don't respond to his performance, however, one killing another accidentally, V scoffs and tells N that he didn't even kill anyone, pointing her own bow and arrow at the crowd, making them clap for her. Uzi tries to call over N from the darkness of the woods, using the text box to say, hello, smiley face, and don't tell V I'm here. N responds loudly, telling her to come out and join them. He then panics over his inclusive reflexes, and Uzi forces herself to come out from the woods to say hi. Someone freaks out and shoots an arrow at her, which Uzi uses the absolute solver to stop the arrow, but accidentally loses control and turns it into a biological flesh pile of meat and blood. This makes V very not okay with this development, getting ready to attack Uzi as she backs away. Panicking. She sees a dead camper and becomes more distressed before telling them all she lives in the woods now and runs off. She runs off to a lodge and forces the door off its hinges before shoving it back and piling other furniture on top of it. She closes all the blinds before ripping open her bag and reaching for bits of drone. The ticking of the clock begins to overwhelm her, and she uses the absolute solver to turn off all power to the lodge except for a single light. When she tries to turn it off, it instead fills with blood and begins growing into a biological mass at an exceeding rate, covering the interior of the lodge. Back with the campers, N is trying to stop V from going after Uzi to kill her.
V, we can't hurt Uzi!
We do our jobs, and that thing leaves us alone.
Don't know what you're talking about because you won't tell me! What are you so afraid of?
I'm not afraid.
I am! Uzi is! She's a kid, like us, V! What is wrong with you?
N tells V to look after the campers so that he can go look for Uzi. V then tells them all to do whatever they want as she goes and walks off. In the forest, two campers start looking for somewhere romantic to go make out. They find a spooky-looking and suspiciously familiar-looking lodge, which is perfect for them. They open the door, where a strange gooey substance is displayed over the walls. This is hard to see, however, as all power is cut from the lodge. A flashlight falls from above, where it turns on momentarily to show an empty backpack. Darren gets the flashlight to work, but the door slams shut, causing both drones to look back toward it. But from behind them, a wall of flesh peels open to reveal a flash of wing and giggling. An X appears on Uzi's visor. N is still looking for Uzi when he finds footsteps leading to a lodge nearby. He enters it and finds a large console. He attempts to work it, fails, and he instead finds a VHS tape titled JC Tech Training Video, Zombie Drones, with a warning to not play it for drones as they will not like it. When N touches it, his vision blurs and shows a shadow figure showing a maid drone, a chandelier holding an arm of a human, a black hole forming over a mansion, and then he gasps and backs away from the tape. Back in Uzi's lodge, she's eating the drones and vomits it up as she shifts in and out of control of herself. She sees that something that she was eating has crawled out of the door. On the lake, a group of campers have made a fire and are roasting batteries beside it while telling scary stories. One of the drones expresses her concern over Darren and Rebecca sneaking out and not coming back in a long time. Perfectly timed, Rebecca grabs the drone's leg and, when questioned of who did this mauling on her, she can't remember the name of the person.
Don't remember name. Super unpopular.
Descriptive clues, man!
Purple eyes. Hot topic.
Nobody can pinpoint who this person could be. From a distance, Uzi sees the campers and laughs to herself. The fire disappears, and the campers turn to see Uzi standing in the near distance, now fitted with a bony tail with a head, weird jaw thingy, and bat wings. She decapitates one of them with the absolute solver, and they all split up and run in separate directions. The drone saying that was not in the book after a drone had said that it was in the book. One drone is running off to the woods when he trips and falls down a hill until landing upside down against a tree. He sees Uzi land onto a nearby treetop and spots him before sliding down. He quickly crawls to the other side of the tree, trying to calm his breathing before checking to see if she was behind him. When he turns back, the tail thing is looking at him, but he doesn't notice. A book falls on his head as he hears Uzi giggling to herself. He asks if the book has pictures, and she says,
It doesn't. I checked.
As he screams, Lizzie is running in another direction until she finds a girl waving to her in the distance. Unfortunately, it's just Uzi luring her to come closer. Before Uzi can make her strike on the girl, however, V stops her and makes some swipes at Uzi, cutting off her tail. As V makes her way toward Uzi, Uzi begs for help, but V starts referring to her as someone else named Sin, saying,
New body, same horrors. Huh, Sin?
Uzi claims that she doesn't know who that is and asks to talk to N, which V says that she will make sure she cannot. Uzi then goes feral again and tosses V to the side and tears off her arm. She pins her to a tree with the arm, causing her to misfire a rocket toward Lizzie. Then, V is thrown to the ground. V tries to get her with the nanite tail, but Uzi snags it, rips it off, and then prepares to stab it right into V's face. But before she can make contact, N picks her up. Uzi stabs his hand with the nanite tail before waking up. He then throws Uzi into the air before tending to his wound, as well as V's toward her own wounds. He then blames V for antagonizing her, which V says that N always takes her side. N then flies up to meet with Uzi. N asks Uzi what's going on, and Uzi covers herself up with her wings, ashamed of what she looks like and what she has done. N says that they will figure that out, but that's not what he means. Uzi then asks if he is going to leave her behind, but when N explains to her that before they met, scary things happened and he was always scared, but that when she is around, she makes him more fun and makes him feel a little less scared. Uzi states that she feels similarly. N uses Uzi's tail thing to say that they will stick together in a silly voice, when Uzi smacks his hand away and says to not touch it before moving it herself and making it say something in its voice, I don't know what, because they crash into the ground. V prepares for another fight, but sees N is holding Uzi with her tail and wings now gone. Uzi apologizes to N, and they make up a bit, telling each other that they're going to figure things out together. V says that Uzi is no longer a threat and retracts her swords. The bus leaves the camp and the teacher asks V about the missing campers. V takes the blame entirely for Uzi, but the teacher doesn't really care. The bug thing crawls inside Uzi's hat also. N and Uzi are sleeping on each other when N wakes up to see Uzi is being burned from the sun. He moves her hand out of the way when Uzi closes hers around N's. He retracts this gesture quickly and looks at the VHS tape he found in the cabin before. End of episode. Cabin Fever for many was a good episode, but also had people start realizing inconsistencies with the show. For example, many students die in this episode with little reaction towards the characters or side characters. Death has become a punchline in the show rather than something to be scared of, unless the episode requires it to be something to be scared about. Additionally, people were starting to get frustrated and turned off by the series because no answers were really being answered and we were 4 episodes in. However, even with these downfalls, this is still some of people's favorite episodes, especially at the time. Additionally, the lack of reaction of worker drones dying could be because they are programmed to fear dying but to not actually react to the deaths of worker drones because of how the humans program them to react in certain situations, as they, again, are worker drones and probably did heavy labor that would have killed them. One of the big groups of people that really liked this episode were the fanbase's shippers, especially NX Uzi shippers. Now, we all know that shippers and fanbases can be aggressive, but around this time, the Murder Drones shipping community was getting to a point where people were doxing other people and trying to pull up evidence of Liam being a pedophile because of the unclear ages of the characters, especially N. While it is made clear that Uzi is a high schooler, N seems to be much older than her, and this made people think that this was a huge problem for their relationship, especially if we were going to be a more intimate one. This episode helps calm the tide by having N exclaim that they are kids loudly. While this still caused some stir on this news, mostly with people just saying it was only added in to make such a distinction, it mostly settled everything and the community was a little safer now. As for me, I don't really care because they're robots in a fictional world where they kill each other. It's whatever. The next episode trailer was titled Did You Miss Me? And was released in May, teasing the episode to release in June. The trailer starts with a photo of the 3 main murder drones we know and love, with the drone from the beginning of episode 2 we never got a name for. There are also 2 blacked out humans in the photo. The photo is torn up and glass is shattered on the ground. As we see more of the room we are in revealed, we see we are in the mansion again, and a drone leaning on a wall has toppled over. More drones litter the floor as we see oil or blood pooling the floors. Everything goes dark as all the drones' eyes turn into the murder drone's X before they turn off themselves. We then hear a more robotic voice than we are used to say,
Did you miss me?
The whole trailer looks as if it was shot on a vintage camera, by the way. Starting now, all of the upcoming episodes are going to work on putting all these pieces together. Albeit some of them do it through some strange storytelling, but you know what, that's okay. Now, every episode starts with the glitch intro, and I've been skipping it these first few episodes because it doesn't add anything to the story. However, this one is unique in that it starts with the episode rather than being separate. The VHS tape starts with the J.C. Jensen logo, an FBI warning, and the beginning of the Automated Services Technician Training WD Disassembly-1A Overview, or the zombie drones. The video gives some examples for why you might want to disassemble a worker drone. 53% because of the unit damage, 27% because of upgrading models, 11% for terminating operations, 7% for competitor products, 2% for core failure trip, and 1% other. Then it shows a diagram of the first step, software cleanup. First, you gotta make sure the worker drone matches the PIN and ID of the whatever thing. Here we learn that improper disposal of the AI is punishable by fines and imprisonment. Once that's done, you can upload WDOS_606, which apparently is fun for them, according to humans, and will eliminate their AI harmlessly. After clearing the software, you can then clean up the hardware through human inspection. Once done, to make sure the affirm core is disconnected and process the drone core through the disassembly unit, the next step was to go through another human inspection, but the tape burns up and skips to a title screen titled Zombie Drones. Zombie drones is something that can happen to a drone when the core is not properly disconnected. Hardware is not physically destroyed, or the WDOS_606 is interrupted or rejected immediately, or the WDOS_606 is interrupted or rejected immediately or up to 5 years later. This can cause the drone to have a software reboot and become active again. However, the soft reboot rate has been seen less than 0.01% of the time. Causes of this from the core are either technical error or faulty OS string or fail-safe wear. The corrupted AI can cause future issues with increased risk. We finally get to see where we are, and it is a drone graveyard with crows eating through it. Deep in a pile of drones, we see a drone wake up, probably from a soft reboot we were just warned about. And just like that, we're just not going to worry about it. We are in a mansion now. Deal with it. In the library, we see a gate labeled restricted. We see several worker drones with the arrow code 606. Among the drones stuck in time, we hear N talking about golden retrievers. While flipping through the book 101 Dog Breeds, he finds a page of drawings, N and V as lizards, and J in a humanoid persona saying kill yourself. He throws it over to a shutdown V who also flashes the 606 error. N continues his reading, saying that golden retrievers are known for their having gentle mouths. A thump in the direction of V stops his reading, and we see behind her is a hatchet leading to a room underneath the floor. N stands up and the book falls behind him. When he looks, it is titled Danger. 2 more books fall that say, Enter the Spooky Basement. The hatch slams more violently, and N shakes his head and walks away. A bug walks across the table to a teacup filled with oil. It starts to drink from it when another bug surfaces and farts in its face. A claw then stabs one while also saying stab. It uses another claw to pick up the tea and tells N as he walks in that he seems upset. Big brother. In the darkness, a bunch of camera eyes similar to the ones that projected holograms in episode 2 are in the room. But after a flash of lightning, it is just another drone. The one from episode 2 that we never got named but now has the voice from the teaser trailer. She asks N if he wants to attend the gala with her before taking a sip of tea but spilling it on the floor instead. N insists that they aren't invited, but instead suggests that they hang out together. The drone sits up at the bar. It is important to note that not only does this robot sound more robotic than the others, but details every action they take as if in the third person.
Crisscross applesauce. Am I not wanted, N?
The drone asks N if she is unwanted, and tries to reassure her by saying it's just Tessa's folks, but stops when blood spills on a platter he is cleaning. When he tries to clean it, a reflection of the ceiling tells him to go to the basement and to stop ignoring this presence. N throws the platter across the room, and then tells the drone to not give him those eyes, that of which is a stock image of a dog. She giggles and states that she is
I am so naughty. The flesh demands invitation.
N caves and says that they can ask Tessa, but if they can't go, they will have a movie night. And the drone agrees with these terms. In the main party room or something, I don't know, N and the drone walk in and go toward the only human in the room, dodging other drones setting up for the gala. The human across the room is slightly annoyed by the robots choosing a style he doesn't like and kills one as if it was nothing. On the side wall, another human is freaking out about people coming since she's only ever talked to robots. She asks Jay, who is also a maid robot here,
to be ripping royal stud!
Jade changes her posture slightly, then gestures toward herself. They clink glasses, and the girl winces and rubs her arm. Jay looks worried, and the girl tells her that she is alright, but then screams at the sight of N, pleasantly surprised. Tessa, the girl dummy, picks him up and twirls him around as N says hello. He sees words being written in the window stating, "We are about to frickin' die. Speak aloud. ID Dark X Wolf 17. N moans at this, and Tessa asks who he brought with him, only to be disappointed to see the drone. The drone says that Jay seems to have forgotten to let her out of the basement timeout, with Jay hiding the key in her hair. N then asks wordily if they are locking her up. But before Tessa can answer, her mother comes by and says that they will not entertain the dumpster pets. When Mother sees that the unnamed drone is there, she says that she asked for it to be out of her sight and still can't follow simple orders. Before Tessa can explain herself, her mom says that all the drones in the library are being thrown out, including the ones in front of her. While everyone remains silent, the unnamed drone says that the others aren't broken and can no longer be thrown out. Before the mom can go guns loaded on her, Enz comes in and tells the mom that he told the drone to say that. He says that he hates doing orders and that her fan is dumb. Flash to the outside, where N is tied to a tree and playing with the crows. When he tosses a stick for the crows, instead of them flying toward it, they all stay in place on the ground and look at him simultaneously with their eyes glowing. He starts getting attacked by all the crows, and in desperation, he says Dark X Wolf 17. All the crows fly away except for one, the shadow of the crow changing from a crow into the sign for the Absolute Solver. Then the crow starts disfigurement and breaking until its eye explodes and falls to the ground. The crow then stands up, revealing its other eye being the Absolute Solver. A user ID appears above its head and reveals the name once again. We hear the crow say that it made the tag when it was 8. It also sounds a lot like Uzi for some reason. Back in the house, the other two drones and Tessa are chained in a bedroom. Tessa tries to break the chains, but to no avail. She asks Jay for help, but when she says she can't do anything since her mom said no, she then asks for the other drone named Sin, yes, that Sin, to help, and that if the butler guy, or i.e. N, dies for her sake, she will be very cross. Sin merely says that she has backups as she tears apart dolls and uses the Absolute Silver to grab a bug. Tessa kneels down to examine the chain, but while doing this sees Sin as a giant snake robot, saying that Tessa will not have to discard her pets and that Sin will not have to discard her. She then transforms into the camera things again and tells Tessa to stay away from the gala since she seems squeamish. Sin exits through the window. Tessa and Jay are silent as they stare out of the window. They look at each other, and a doll with robotic claws for legs walks around going right in front of the camera and then out of sight. Back outside, N reviews that Dark X Wolf 17 said, basically being that N is trapped in his memories and that he is dead at a sleepover. Dark X Wolf 17 said that it's not a sleepover and passed out because of an internal program trying to delete the memories he is in. He asks if the crow is doing that, and she says, "Nuh-uh, I'm helping." Also, she calls him cute and weird twice. They need to figure out what is happening here to restore the memory files and save N from being digitally lobotomized. N goes along with it and says that Dark X Wolf 17 seems like an evil ghost witch. She pecks him and says that she is a ghost witch, and tall, before yelling for her dad to get out of her room and shutting down. The crow falls in the water and the scene gets all corrupted. In Uzi's room, we see Uzi in her swivel chair with N and V on the floor, passed out as Khan walks in. She tells him to leave as there is important hacking going on, and he obliges with her demand. He is just excited to see Uzi actually having friends over. Uzi says that it's not a sleepover and slams the door shut. The crow wakes up and is inside the building in N's arms. It asks where they were before seeing the inside of the mansion covered in blood and scary robot stuff. What looks like an early version of a murder drone looms over V as she is now standing over the basement hatch. Dark X Wolf 17 says that she can pull N out at any time, much like what N begs for, but she explains that he won't get his memories back. So, N obliges and keeps going. He questions whether these memories are that important, and Dark X Wolf 17 explains that they are to both of them. He asks why and who she is, and she states that they are just hanging out. Seeing how V needs to be moved, N comes down and grabs her legs and moves her out of the way. N moves the carpet out of the way, just to find out that they need a key. N knows J has it, but they hear a laugh that stops them, and V is suddenly smiling wide with a biological hand. The crow poops out an egg. Back in Tessa's room, Jay is now trying to break off Tessa's chains, while Tessa sings songs about it wanting paid time off and union negotiations. Eventually, Jay finally does it and punches it. They leave the room to find Sin and kill her. They each find a sword and a gun, switching who gets what when they see what the other has. N, on the other end of the balcony, calls for Tessa to come over. As they look at each other, a pair of glasses fall from above, where something is crawling on the ceiling. They all huddle together, and N explains that they need the basement key, and how this beard is from the future.
This bird's from the future.
The crow flies to J and says, "I kill you," before taking the key and coming back to N. Tessa says that Sin is going to massacre the gala, but N vouches for her and says,
Arson? Nah, she's cool.
V comes down and tears up the group, going after Tessa first. J defends her and tells N to go do their basement thing while they fight V. After a couple of really bad attempts of getting back to the basement, N and Dark X Wolf 17 finally get out of there. The people at the gala see the fighting on the balcony and watch. N gets back to the library, in even more disrepair than before now somehow. The murder drone statue is gone, now replaced with the absolute solver. They hear someone cooking as they rush to the basement where Sin opens the door, grabs N while killing Dark X Wolf 17. Before Sin can kill N, she is taken over by Dark X Wolf 17. But they don't have time to celebrate as V is back and they gotta get in the basement. After a couple slams from above, N asks if V is okay in the future, which Dark X Wolf says, unfortunately, then moves on to what Sin was up to in the basement. We see parts of drones and claws and scary stuff like that, including a decapitated version of N. N doesn't take this well for about 2 seconds and then moves on. Dark X Wolf 17 is satisfied with what they have found and tries to get them to leave, but suddenly we are back in Uzi's bedroom for some reason. Khan comes in and asks if Uzi invited Doll over, to which he is pulled away by Doll and the door is flown across the room as Doll appears in the hallway. Back in the basement, En is alone with a disassembled head thing, which is taken over by Sin again shortly afterward. She slams him into the chair where the old En was and says they are going to reset his memories again, revealing surgical equipment. Back at the gala, the dad taps his glass to make a toast. However, he is interrupted by Sin teleporting into the room. On the opposite side of the room, Tessa and Jay slam open the doors and announce that they are going to fight Sin. Sin clears the room and tries to tell Tessa to remember, but Tessa starts shooting and throwing things at Sin, interrupting her. Eventually, she raises her arm and turns out all the lights and takes control of all the drones, becoming Eldritch Sin. She finally says that she didn't have to see this. Back in the basement, En hears the cries of people dying. Some say you can hear Tessa screaming "Mom," but I can't hear it. As other Sin is trying to pick up medical equipment from her comically large claw, she eventually calls over V to help her. Back in Uzi's room, they are using their solvers to fight for the bug thing that Uzi found at Cabin Fever. But when she sees that she is running out of time to save N and V, she decides that she will let Doll have the bug rather than herself, even though she knows it's the only way to know what's wrong with her. She slams the door shut on Doll, who now has the bug. She tells Khan that she has raised a good daughter. In the basement, V is also trying to pick up the equipment, but is failing to do so. When Sin starts losing her patience, N offers V her glasses, which helps her see and grab the equipment. N tells her that he got her. V then recites to N,
Golden retrievers have gentle mouths.
Sin despises this moment and pins V to the ceiling while deciding to just delete N's OSs. But before Sin can make the devastating lobotomy, Dark X-Wolf 17 takes back control. She drops V and N rushes over to her to make sure she is okay. He then looks over at Dark X-Wolf 17 and exclaims, "Uzi?" in recognition. She confirms this by saying, "Don't dox me," then N thanks her. V stands up, then tells Uzi to get out of her head. Back in Uzi's room, both of the drones wake up and V blushes at N before pulling out a chainsaw on Uzi. Doll is at the lake in the campgrounds where Jay and Tessa are waiting for her. She tosses them the bug, calling it the key, then telling them to take her with them. Tessa shoots a gun at Doll, making her shut up. Then she says she was just checking. For what? I don't know. Tessa then exclaims that the group move along, but when they turn around, they see N, V, and Uzi in their path. They all scream before the episode ends. This was the first big lore episode in Murder Drones, where we got answers to a lot of questions, one of the big ones being N and V's past. In case it was too confusing, N and V were a type of worker drone when the humans were still around, possibly repurposed by Tessa from the dump. Her newest introduction to the drone family was Sin, but there was something wrong about her that even Tessa couldn't fix. This is likely due to a core malfunction like the zombie drone tapes described. However, Tessa and Jay decided to simply lock her in the basement whenever Sin did something they didn't really like. This caused you to have a lot of free time and to use her absolute solver to experiment on drones, eventually getting what you see in the episode. She would wipe their memories and test on them, V and N included, until she got the ideas for murder drones and her absolute solver powers. She created the absolute solver program, or at least she just had it with her when the core malfunctioned. Either way, she used it to control other drones. It'll get explained later on how Doll and Uzi have their own absolute solvers as well, but for now, that's all you really need to know. This episode might have been the most poorly received because one of the characters' unwanted involvement, Uzi. People felt like she didn't contribute much to the episode and that if anything, she had turned into an annoying side character for the episode. However, it can be made up for the fact that there was still a lot of lore explained, as well as a scene where V connects with N in a way fans have been wanting for months now. The next episode trailer was released in the beginning of August, with the episode releasing merely 2 weeks from then. It starts by hearing an elevator ding, then a series of rooms are shown to the viewer. These rooms in order are a hallway with an elevator, the other end of the hallway with a dead drone scattered about, a reception area with more dead drones, a desk with a computer on its home desktop, a cubicle area with drones that have a loading graphic on their visors, a hallway with cages with the silhouette of a raptor robot, a camera room with bits of drones everywhere, a surgical area seemingly in the same place as the camera room, a hole from above with our three protagonists looking down into the hole. They look at each other for a second before we hear another elevator ding and the trailer ends. We open with a computer desktop screen of a tropical beach. We zoom out to see a cubicle among an entire office space. The lights go out, and we see a drone named 029 shuddering and hiding underneath the cubicle. She looks around to see another drone frozen in place and laying on the ground with a loading graphic on their visor. She crawls over to them, a robotic raptor claw stepping down not too far away. When 029 finally reaches the drone, the raptor has sneaked away. A flash of blue light flickers, and a strange noise of screaming and raptor roaring echoes down the hall. 029 looks away and starts pulling the drone back to her hiding place. Back behind her wall of safety, she reaches out again to make the final pull, but two raptors come in and tear the drone apart right above her. As 029 tries to calm her breathing, a raptor rises its head from the other side of the cubicle and flashes a blue light at 029, causing her to become still and loading. Through a security camera, we see it crawl over the rest of the way and eat 029, with other drones littered around the office space. The camera is recording the event. On the frozen lake, we see our characters where we left off. Anne steps forward and says, "Tessa?" Tessa rushes forward and swings him around like she did in episode 5, excited that her favorite drone remembers her. She quickly stops to cough, reminding herself the air is toxic, and Anne is too tall and handsome to be swayed around. She points to Uzi to ask who she is, but before she can fully ask, Uzi bites Tessa's finger. Uzi introduces herself and asks why a human is on the planet. She sees Jay and makes another snarky comment about killing Jay. Jay explains that effective drones get cloned more, and N and V shake their heads and confirm that is in fact Jay. Tessa tries to explain that Sin disappeared on Earth, Jay interrupting her, saying that Tessa ran away. Tessa correcting her, saying that they were mutually disengaged. Sin's last known act was sending the disassembly drones to this planet and other exoplanets. It's important to note here that they are not on Earth. They are on an exoplanet. This exoplanet is called Copper 9. N asks why they were sent to an exoplanet, and Jay answers that they are trying to figure that out. Doll, who has remained silent up until now, grabs a bug with the absolute solver and runs off with it, teleporting partially as she does so. Tessa explains that they need that bug, and Jay follows Doll into the industrial building, firing rockets at her. Tessa follows by slashing her sword and firing her own gun. Doll, however, jumps off a ledge and into the pit. N and Uzi and V all fly over while Tessa tells Jay to relay Sin's plan to the group. Step 1 of this super epic plan is to clear the drop zone of life and construct spires. Step 2 is to enter a lab with the symbol of a skull and a tent and trees behind it. Tessa then reveals a piece of tape with the symbol and the words cabin fever. That's all they have of the plan so far, but they decided that if Sin wants them, they are going to try to burn down the labs. They can't do that, however, without the key bug. Tessa tosses Jay the keys to the ship and tells her to keep an eye on it. Uzi stops Tessa and asks about Doll's involvement and what's happening to her, hoping to also find an answer to her own strange happenings. Tessa explains that Doll thinks the humans did something to her family in the labs, giving them a sickness that she inherited. When Uzi pushes for more information, Tessa thinks that she thinks Doll is right, jumping into the pit. N, V, and Uzi follow her, with N holding on to Tessa before landing so as to not have her die on the spot. While they inspect their surroundings, Tessa strokes N's hair. After moving to a more secure location, N asks if the secret elevator is labeled. V rolls her eyes while Uzi's tail nibbles on N's hat. Tessa stumbles upon a pile of dead disassembly drones, with oil written on the floors and walls talking about the light and not looking at it. Tessa then explains this is due to security done to prevent murder drones from entering the labs. We see computer panels saying core collapse and a warning for anti-drone centennials //status free roam. Uzi, seeing that there might be something scarier than the disassembly drones, reaches for N's hand, but hesitates when Tessa shouts that she can undo the security. However, when she pulls out a piece of paper, it says access is denied. She puts the paper back and whispers, maybe. V shrugs and says she'll do anything to screw with Sin's plan, N chimes in with Mom's backstory, who sheepishly agrees. As they continue looking for the secret elevator, they find a sign that shows them where it is, much to N's excitement. But before they can make their way, Tessa steps on a rope trap and is dragged down the opposite hallway, telling them As they run down the hallway, they hear a baby laughing down an adjacent hall and see a trail of oil leading down it. Down the hall, they see a baby drone playing childgiggling.mp3 on the floor. Uzi suggests that they shoot the baby immediately, with N jumping out, saying,
Shoot the baby immediately.
The baby grows stick legs and starts crawling up the walls into an open ceiling board, grabbing its hat before disappearing. A hand attached to a coil slides in front of them from behind and it unsheaths an EMP weapon. When they look behind them, they see a drone as well as the baby drone slide into view and laugh, saying hello to the surface lickers in a country accent before enabling the EMP. Uzi wakes up and finds herself under a bright light, tied to a surgical table. She sees a security camera area across the room. She sits up and her body shakes as a magnet is on her head, keeping her woozy. Next to her, the drone from before is chopping up a body with an axe. The drone talks to herself about how the Centennials pick a bit too much on the drone she is dissecting, turning toward Uzi, telling her she tries not to damage the good parts. She then tells Uzi some drones are more valuable than others. By the way, before I forget, this drone's design has her antlers of various tools and parts as well as a tail. It's not entirely important, just a unique design that we don't see. Anyway, she moves over the curtain to reveal V with her own magnet on her head. She whispers that she's more valuable, and Uzi tells her to wait because if she cuts her up, then she will unleash a big creepy worm. The drone explains that heat keeps them sluggish and opens an oven to reveal the other disassembly drone hearts in jars. Uzi tries to use her absolute solver to release herself, but she glitches and the drone comes over telling her that she has dealt with witches before too. She looks at Uzi's choker and says that she hasn't seen 02 since she let them die. In another room, Tessa is tied on her own bed with a magnet taped to her head. The baby drone is already dissecting N, who is laughing and giggling. The baby drone is having a hard time keeping his cool under surgery, adjusting the light and dabbing his head with a cloth. When he turns back to N, he reassures the baby he's doing great, much to Tessa's frustration. N helps the baby where he needs to see, which the baby appreciates. The drone in Uzi's room, named Alice, tells Bo, the baby, that they have Nori's kid here and asks for more sedatives or magnets because she is feisty. So Bo grabs some magnets, types in a code to open the door, and is off, after waving goodbye at N. Tessa immediately unrestrains herself and exclaims her relief that she finally has the code to the door, suggesting N and her have a walk and talk. Back with Uzi, Bo is arranging a magnet hairdo on Uzi's head. Uzi tries asking about her mom, with both Alice and Bo ignoring her. Alice tells Bo to go back to the others before performing surgery on Uzi. Uzi can see from one of the cameras that N and Tessa have escaped, however. Alice finally tells Uzi that she is a lot like her mom, except the yellow eyes. She then goes to cut off the tip of Uzi's finger. Uzi flicks away the tool and says that she has the wrong person, but is interrupted with a steak knife stabbed to her hand and confirming Nori's name before telling Uzi that Nori blew up a bunch of people. Alice brings the tool back to Uzi's finger and begins to cut down, but Uzi tries to fight her strength with her absolute solver, but fails in the end. V winces at the sound of Uzi's pain. Meanwhile, Bo returns to his surgery area and finds nobody there. He runs from his room to another, while N and Tessa watch from behind a cubicle. N says that the others have got to be where he went, with Tessa reassuring N that they will save V. N kicks away a chair and says, "And Uzi." Tessa turns around and types on the computer some more, asking if N wants to see Earth. N says that they don't have time for that, but she moves out of the way of the screen and N sees Earth for the first time. Back in Uzi's room, Bo and Alice are scanning the cameras for N and Tessa. Alice says they can't get out of their rooms, as well as themselves, and closes all the doors in the area. She opens another door where we see sentinels behind it and immediately begins stalking the area. Uzi tries her best to use her absolute solver, but it goes from purple to yellow above the door controls. N is looking at the computer screen. Earth is destroyed, with light sticking out as if pushing pieces of it away. A black hole is at its center. This is a live feed. N looks at Tessa, who says that they know it mutates in damaged AI, and that it took Sin as a host and then took everything afterwards. She shows N code in the shape of the absolute solver, a picture of the aftermath of what happened in the mansion. Biological growths everywhere, with security personnel examining everything. Tessa is seen sitting on the floor crying in Redacted. We see a huge part of the mansion had fallen into a sinkhole and then the Earth once again. The humans on the other exoplanets saw what happened to Earth and thought that they could try to understand it. We see other systems being corrupted and a picture of Nori along with bloody drones in an office space. Oil strewn around the area in the absolute solver symbol. Sentinels stand at the ready and a human looks at a check sheet titled, "What horrors hath man's hubris wrought this time?" We then see video footage of a drone in a cathedral with yellow eyes and the camera taken down by the drone. Tessa then says that all this did was spread the absolute solver, and asks if they can fix Uzi and that is why they are here. Tessa says that she is here to find what drones are infected, and when she finds the list she needs,
I'll need you to choose the universe over one little drone and
Uzi. Before they can talk more, a sentinel stares at N and flashes him with light, causing him to buffer, and the sentinel grabbing him. It then runs away with N. Through the camera, we see N slammed against the wall, and Alice laughing at this development. Bo sees Uzi trying to use the absolute solver, her visor shattering and something bad happening to the door controls. The sentinel pins N on the ground and prepares to dig in when Tessa steps in and tries to calmly release the drone. The sentinel tries to flash Tessa, which does not work other than being really bright. She reaches out her hand in a Jurassic World-style way, and the sentinel bites her hand. After seeing blood, the sentinel slams its head into the wall and shuts itself down. Other sentinels start surrounding her and try flashing her as well. In Uzi's room, gravity got turned off and Bo flew through the air. She looks at Uzi, who is now talking in Sin's voice, and says to not mind her. V turns her head and is unhappy with this development. Uzi snaps her fingers and creates a black hole by the control panel, causing the entire system to disappear. A cool touch to this is how it says null in the middle, making a cool detail in the robotic world and how drones see the world. Since a black hole seemingly sucks everything in it and we still don't really know where it goes, putting null in the middle adds a cool detail of it being an instance where there is absolute nothing. It's not exactly like how the humans are blacked out, as that is theorized more to be because the data was blocked or removed from the memories rather than they are actually not being there. But it's still a cool detail. Uzi passes out as the doors open in the facility. All the sentinels see doors opening and immediately go to see what new food awaits them. Alice tries to close one of the doors and asks Bo to help her, but before she can finish, a sentinel is in front of her. It flashes her and she falls as the sentinel walks in. It walks over to Uzi, who has her eyes closed. Bo starts charging a laser beam with his murder drone arm and tries to aim while not looking at the sentinel. However, he shoots off V's ropes instead, dying in the process. V unrestrains her other arm and rushes towards Uzi. She tries to help Uzi, but another sentinel has walked in, almost flashing V. V is cornered when she pulls out her gun and prepares to turn and shoot. But when she turns, a sound goes off and the sentinels have been replaced with a hole covered in tissue, and a black hole forming in the gap of the middle of it. The black hole dissipates and the tissue melts away. V looks at Uzi and sees her cracked visor being healed. Tessa pokes N, trying to wake him up. He wakes up and finds himself in another surgical room with the door closed. Before Tessa can make another sentence, V crashes through the ceiling and finds N and Tessa. N starts to ask about Uzi, but V quickly says she's hurt and that they are leaving. Tessa offers her help, and V puts a knife to her throat and says that Tessa said that she could control the Sentinels. Tessa hesitates and says that they can't boot loop her. Before she can keep going, V says to do whatever she wants and gestures for N that he should follow V. N hesitates, and Tessa puts a hand on his shoulder, saying that she hadn't told V the truth yet. Before any more comments can be made, however, Uzi wakes up with a headache. She quickly recovers, though, after seeing N. He waves awkwardly, and she rushes to hug him tightly. Tessa and V look at each other, and without exchanging words, V knows exactly what is going on with Uzi. In the halls, music starts playing, and lights are flickering. The sentinel that bit Tessa wakes up, eyes now red. It follows the blood and or oil path, going back to the reception desk, and down more and more rooms, until it stops at the trail to some words that say, "Hold still." On the balcony, V prepares to shoot it with N pondering something with Uzi next to him. Uzi notices this and taps his arm. With words on her visor, she asks, "You good?" while giving him a questioning thumbs up. N looks up and shrugs his shoulders. Uzi puts a hand on N's hand reassuringly and asks, "Talk later?" ? N turns his visor into words as well, saying it sucks pretty hard. Uzi responds with a whatever that face is. Back down on the ground, a door opens and another sentinel motions for the one in the room to follow it. Once all the sentinels have left the room, our group falls to the ground. On the ground, Uzi peers down a hallway that seems to have a reception counter on the other end. Doll is boot-looped with the bug key in her hand. The proximity reader where the bug key must be placed is flashing, waiting for the key to be placed upon. The key has its automated message of placing it upon the proximity reader. Uzi comments how convenient this is. V thinks that this is a trap, but Uzi has her back down so she can use her absolute solver. However, both V and N tell her to stop, with N grabbing Uzi's hand. N and V stare at each other, trying to communicate their next steps. However, Tessa has already made it to the other side and grabbed the bug key. Cautiously, V, N, and Uzi make their way down the hallway. As they go down, V wields her gun while N and Uzi hold hands. Uzi looks down and shoves N a little bit, telling him that they should change their hand positions. They both blush and digitally sweat to this, but ultimately, they like it. V keeps an eye on the closed doors and lights on the ground. V reaches Tessa and looks back, where N and Uzi also stop and notice everyone is looking at them holding hands. Tessa asks to not take her robot, and V says ew. Uzi runs up to Tessa and says that he is his own person and that V is mean. Doll, however, and unfortunately, wakes up and uses the absolute solver to take the bug back from Tessa, showing that she instead was playing a buffering gift to trick them. She then backflips, puts the key on the proximity reader, causing the floor and ceiling right outside the room to open. Doll then opens all the doors in the hallway, then falls down into the shaft right before the elevator closes it off. The elevator doors swing open in the wrong direction, causing the group to be cornered and closed out. Through the open doors, the sentinels are starting to wander in. As they start to notice the drones, Tessa steps up front and reveals her bloody arm to try to deter the sentinels. This would work for most of them, except for one, the one that bit her initially. V takes to the air as Uzi tries to use her absolute solver on the other side of the elevator. After the wall breaks, her absolute solver turns yellow again and creates another black hole surrounded by tissue. Tessa flings her blood toward the rogue sentinel, trying to deter it further, but it only coughs up a murder drone's arm and triggers its gun to come out and fire. V stops the bullet and shoots it back toward the sentinel, breaking off the gun. V looks up and we find out that she was actually using her glasses. The black hole is sucking in more mass. While Uzi can't control her disfigured hand, N cuts her hand off and looks at Uzi, but when Uzi looks back at him, she grows a large, toothy smile, eyes yellow and a text box appearing, saying, "Miss me?" before falling onto the ground. The black hole dissipates and Uzi continues to glitch out profusely. Tessa sees this and comments on how not good this is and tries to make her team go in the elevator. She manages to get Uzi and N inside the elevator when it starts snapping from all the weight, and N calls out to V to hurry up. However, V is rushing the Sentinel who has pulled out the sword from the arm and is now engaging in sword combat. She is wearing sunglasses, by the way, because she's very snazzy. The elevator continues to snap, and V gets ready to make her final blow when she sees a Sentinel approach the bud key. It tears off the proximity reader, and the elevator starts pulling itself back up. V gets her glasses knocked off and destroyed by a Sentinel. V turns to N and tries to say something to him.
No, Dave, we need you!
Yeah. Uzi? I trust you.
She then cuts the elevator wire, and through N's pleas, she salutes to him and Uzi as she is surrounded by Sentinels, and they begin their meal. The elevator wire snaps, and the episode ends. The end credits song to this episode features our first vocalized song in the series, which is sung by Elsie Lovelock, the voice of Uzi, and the name of the song is called Eternal Dream. This episode became very popular with the fans, especially with V dying in the end and making a large portion of the fanbase cry over that. It also introduced new characters such as Alice and Bo, which became fan favorites. The lore implications of Uzi's mom and what is happening to Uzi also got people excited for the show again after the slight disappointment of episode 5. The Centennials were a fantastic enemy for the drones, and Tessa was a great new character as well. This is also the start of N's slow mental deterioration as things get from bad to worse, actually begging and having breakdowns through the episode. After this episode was released, Glitch announced a live event called Glitch X, which was going to be used to showcase other indie shows such as Spooky Month and Hell of a Boss, along with their own shows, Murder Drones, Amazing Digital Circus, yada yada yada. The event would be held on November 9th, 2023. This was a huge event for fans, especially after the previous episode's cliffhanger and the upcoming Digital Circus pilot. Speaking of the circus, the Amazing Digital Circus currently has 342 million views as of writing this script. Needless to say, this kinda took off and many Murder Drones fans moved on to this show. This wasn't too bad, but since it was in the middle of a very long gap in Murder Drones content, this did influence the number of fans that were still interested in the show, some even forgetting that it existed. Glitch's push on the pilot also didn't help the Murder Drones fandom, making it seem like they were moving on from it and focusing on the Digital Circus. During Glitch X, Liam has an AMA with the co-founders of Glitch about Murder Drones. They answer questions about the upbringings of the show, some silly questions about the characters, and some questions about what's next, but with very vague answers. However, at the end of the segment, they show a trailer for the final 2 episodes. The trailer would be released 5 days after the event, for people who didn't intend to see. The majority of the trailer was quick compilations of clips from previous episodes as well as voice lines from the characters. However, eventually we see more. After the screen goes black, we see a hole in the corner of a wall, seemingly a cave system. In a cathedral, we see Uzi and N hug each other with Uzi crying into N. We hear N say, "All I know is that I need you." We then see N being dragged by an onslaught of human hands and cables. Sentinels are chained up outside of a cathedral. A locker saying Nori and Stay Out closes from a human hand. A visual of the exoplanet's core collapsing is seen again. In the cathedral again, Uzi and N turn around to look at something. Finally, we see N helping Uzi up while saying he wants to figure things out together. However, we see Uzi crush his arm. This trailer brought the hype for Murder Drones back, with people excited for what seemed to be a confrontation between Uzi and N fighting as the big climax. With this new excitement, the fandom became revitalized. However, the dates for the final 2 episodes were announced, and the only thing fans had to go off of was episode 7 being released early next year and the final episode a few months afterward. While this was unpleasant for people to hear after a long hiatus, they were still excited to know that the series was still being worked on and did plan to have an end. After way too much time, finally, in March 2024, we finally get another episode trailer. However, this episode will be released later that month. We see the elevator shaft that we last saw our heroes in, clearly in the aftermath of the V's sacrifice. The lights flicker out, then flicker back to reveal a cave shaft. A desk with a computer and a desk lamp sits with a painting in the background having the writing help. Next, we see lockers with numbers, the only clearly visible one being 048 with the name Yeva and a do not disturb sign. We then see a hole opening surrounded with biological tissues, the entrance or exit of a cave with the cabin fever symbol on torch setters, the outside of a well-lit cathedral. Inside, we see destroyed workstations, however, with more tissue surrounding the inside. On the end of the cathedral is a gaping hole with teeth and flesh protruding inside it. We then see clouds forming above the cathedral, tentacles coming out of the hole, and having a look of fear or extreme worry, humans roaming around the cathedral, Uzi with the absolute solver sign in her visor, a crucifixion of Christ-like scene with what looks like a drone, Tessa looking down at Uzi with her sword, Uzi staring at a fuzzy screen, a crucifix being held with the absolute solver with some sort of video showing something hitting the GoPro that human had on his head, a dog with the text that says this dog does not appear in this episode, feast your eyes while you can, and helping Uzi up, a beam of light shining down from inside the cathedral, a name tag for Nori, drones outside and several other objects floating in the air as gravity stopped working, and as a murder drone, a flashlight on a wall, a bird-like claw glitching in front of a human's face, Uzi holding her bloody eye, doll looking down angrily, the pit again. I slowed it down, but everything I showed you was within milliseconds. This was exciting for fans as the episode was close to finally being released. Lightning strikes, and we see a lit-up cathedral in a cave, but also a mountain. Also, somehow, there is weather down here. Sentinels are chained up near the entrance of the cathedral. A banner tied between two towers says lab space for rent, leased. Research 012-cabin fever. Inside, we see human workers buzzing around with equipment, clearly just setting up shop inside as there are still pews everywhere. Notice how the only light sources are candles and hanging torches, or whatever they're called. Ridley, a human worker dressed as a priest, says that the science is holding, before opening her fist and saying, "Math." We see a droid tied in tight chains, with oil dripping to the sky, high above the ground floor. When we get a closer look, we see Nori's ID card pass the screen, and Nori awake with yellow eyes and a wide toothy grin. One human worker stares at this, while the others seem to pay no attention to this spectacle. He snaps out of it when Ridley snaps him out of it, yelling at Dr. Chambers. The worker looks at his name card and sees he is wearing the one referring to Dr. Chambers, having left his real name card with the name Mitchell, the intern, on it. He whispers over to Ridley and asks if this guy is important, referring to his name card. Shadows of robotic claws shine on the wall, protruding behind Nori, as they cut the chains easily and she floats to the ground. Another shadow grabs a weapon from the wall and throws it at Dr. Chambers, narrowly missing and hitting his clipboard. A worker flips a lever and a giant magnet sucks Nori into the ground, rendering her disabled for now. Blue light fills the room, and we see the amalgamations of robot and biological claws reaching for various members of the human group. They all retreat back to Nori, and Ridley tells Chambers to get 48, and throws a name card saying Yeva. Chambers tries to ask if this is a doctor-specific thing, while Ridley pulls out a crucifix, which is actually a cool USB, approaching Nori. Chambers runs off to grab 48. He runs down the steps, lights his headlamp with a lighter, and looks behind him as Nori waves at him with a spooky smile. The Sentinels snap at him as he runs past. Chambers slides into a hallway of lockers with various numbers and names on them. He stops at the one numbered 48. We see a drone playing Tetris on its visor with Russian text. The door opens and she pauses her game. We see she's chained up inside. Chambers points at the card and shrugs. Yeva rolls her eyes and slams her head on the locker. An interesting detail with both Yeva and Nori is that they are dressed in peasant rags. This could be another way to communicate the treatment of these experimental drones to the audience, or as a way to prevent the drones from using any special clothing things to attack the humans, since as we see in the church, there is little to no electricity in the entire building. By keeping resources low, this keeps them mildly safer if the drones become consumed by the Absolute Solver, which has happened every single time in the past, according to Tessa. They run back toward the cathedral, Yeva slapping away Chambers' hands as he holds it. Chambers sees that the Centennials are gone, chains flying in the wind somehow. Chambers opens the doors and sees people milling around. Ridley tells Chambers to come here where Nori is with her, and we see the USB was impaled into her face. Nori appears to be dead or deactivated. Chambers hesitates and keeps Yeva from entering the cathedral. He then explains that he couldn't find 48. This confuses Yeva until she's getting a look of realization. Chambers stands by the door when he notices another identical USB surrounded by blood on the floor. Ridley doesn't seem to care about 48 anymore. As Chambers finally steps away from the door, we see parts of the cathedral glitch out. When he comes to the USB on the floor, he stops and bends down to pick it up. He then looks up from behind a pew and sees Ridley's hand on the ground surrounded by blood, and Ridley further back holding her missing arm, trying to stop the bleeding. Chamber only stares. Everything glitches out when a tentacle goes through a pew and grabs Ridley, pulling her to the magnet, which reveals itself to be a flesh pit, and the rest of the hologram ceases, and Chambers sees the skeletons and computers warning of the core collapsing. The ceiling starts to cave in, but Chambers grabs the USB and starts making a run for the pit. He dives out of the way of falling rubble. When he looks up, he sees Nori rising out of the pit with tentacles coming with her. Cameras watch her rise. She is holding Ridley's mask, which is crushed in her hands. Claws expunge out of her back and drag across the ground as she proceeds to Chambers. She then thanks him for the new host as he holds the USB out in front of him. She then uses the Absolute Solver to grab the USB and absolutely plunge it into the face of Chambers while saying MacGuffin, turning everything to static. We see the footage rewind a bit with a song playing in the background, clearly from headphones. A pink Absolute Solver holds up a crucifix, checking to see if it's the same in the video. It moves in various positions until we see a drone heart being the one controlling it. It has an MP3 player nearby, connected with Bluetooth speakers, and playing Nightcore Remix 13. Batteries and a Ninja Star lay in front of it, and it seems to have been drinking out of an oil can with an anime figurine on top of it. Also, there's an anime girl drawing down there. It takes a sip and tosses the crucifix behind her, along with others. The heart is sitting on one of the consoles in the cathedral, with anime posters along the wall. It stands up and stretches while crushing the oil can and tossing it aside as well. It then wipes clean a map of a cave system and takes a crayon to mark down a location, presumably where she found this crucifix, or where it was looking for it next. It throws off the headphones, puts the map in a lunchbox, pickaxe, and a hard hat, while walking towards the pit with yellow lightning popping out of it. On another camera, we see an elevator dial show an elevator rapidly going down the floors until reaching the end and crashing. In a mine shaft, we see dust blow up as N, Uzi, and Tessa fall out of a collapsing elevator shaft. Uzi coughs up blood while N stands up and stares at the closed-off wall. With his eyes seeing vertigo, he starts shooting the wall. When he walks closer, he pulls out his sharp hands and starts tearing the wall apart, throwing rocks behind him. He calls for Uzi to help and use her Absolute Solver, while Tessa yells at him to watch it. He looks back to see that Uzi was almost hit by one of the rocks he threw, only not making contact because Uzi used her solver to break it in half. She holds a bleeding eye while saying she doesn't think she should. She then says she's sorry, with N realizing what he did and trying to say it's okay and apologize for himself. Tessa interrupts him and brings her sword down between the two, saying that they can go save V after they finish what they came down here to do. She then suggests that Uzi sits out of this, pointing her towards a box. When Uzi begins to interject, Tessa immediately refers to N for help. N stares at Tessa, thinking. She then tells Uzi that there are things down here that she may not want to see. Uzi's eyes widen as she stumbles up and asks what is going on, and is quick to say nothing, and they don't know everything yet, but assures Uzi that they aren't going to hurt her, clearly telling that part to Tessa. Uzi backs away, repeating his words. Uzi accidentally activates her Absolute Solver, creating another black hole. However, she manages to close it up. After causing another cave-in, En tries to reach for Uzi, but she backs away from him. They look at each other until the wall fully closes up. Back outside, Thad and Lizzie are walking toward the murder drone spire. He asks why she won't tell him why they are wandering around. She answers that she is a really good friend, and secrets her blackmail, and that it's not about football. He accepts this, but asks if her secret friend wants to know about football. Gravity suddenly stops working as various objects start to float off the ground. Car alarms start blaring. Thad and Lizzie float a good 10 feet off the ground before they fall back down with everything else. They look at each other, and a pod flies above them toward the spire. Jay pops out and flies inside. Thad asks if it's related to the thing that they are looking for, and Lizzie says no, laughs, and says it is. In the mine shaft, En is knocked out and Tessa is gone. He wakes up and finds his arm is crushed by a rock. He calls for Uzi, but is greeted with darkness. Seeing no other option, he pulls out his saw and starts hyping himself up for what's about to happen, but by saying he deserves this. Before he starts sawing, however, he hears V giggling in the distance and looks down the shaft and sees a pair of eyes and tentacles protruding from the darkness. Lights flash and we see Maid V waving at En, as well as some robotic monstrosity behind her. En screams. The ceiling is crumbling as we see a poster board, and you bet I'm reading it all to you, you motherfucker. We see a punch card, a poster talking about the surface level irony of the church, and they don't know why it was down here, as well as text saying, "I'm scared, lol." A poster saying that OT is optional, an unrelated note, talking about the singularity consuming everything, a map of the cathedral and mineshaft blueprints, and a notice to all CF staff that they are human, and that due to lack of progress in Unit 048, Team 06, Ridley's team, is attempting 002's recovery via a failsafe USB with an expected completion date of SER's 27th. And a notice at the bottom saying that they don't all die and let it out again because they were mad but mostly scared about that, and a picture of Nori with her eldritch limbs standing in the cathedral. Uzi runs up to this pinboard. She is half yellow for a second before correcting back to purple. She sees the notice about Nori in a picture of the cathedral. She looks up to see a directory pointing to either Junction A or Holding Chamber 1C. Uzi moves down the chamber, looking down another shaft and seeing a cave entrance covered in biological tissue and a skeleton holding a gas lamp. She uses her tail to grab the lamp and goes back the other way. V moves closer to En, saying that she missed him, as he frantically saws off his arm. En thanks the mineshaft trauma ghost, saying he can't hear it fine from where he is. We see that V is not actually moving herself and is actually being puppeteered poorly by tentacles. V then says that
You're one of the main reasons I wanted your team to retain your personalities.
He stops sawing and looks up at V. V then finishes her thought, with him always surprising her. A tentacle grabs him and pulls him up, snapping off his arm. Sin then emerges from the shadows and says that he always loved doing anything before embracing him. We see Sin is connected to another robot snake thing. En's vision blurs, and we see him standing in the rain as a murder drone. Kinda. With something hanging from his mouth. We see he is eating a human. His smile turns into a frown as the human's head falls off, and we see the world under a red light, with drones flying in the air and a giant black hole in the horizon. Humans are screaming as drones eat them alive and tear them apart. We see V and J having a part in the massacre. A helicopter tries to fire upon the drones, but a tentacle swipes it from the air, blowing it up. We see the sky is actually swirling blood. En looks up with an unreadable look on his face until he comes back to reality, saying that access has been denied and to contact the admin Dark X Wolf 17. Sin stops the embrace and En starts hyperventilating. Sin then thanks him for clearing the way on this planet too, before exclaiming, "Let's eat," and disappearing as a hologram and a tentacle dragging him into the darkness. In the cathedral cave, Uzi walks in with her choker in her hands. By the way, I don't know if this is a choker or a bracelet or whatever it is, but it might also have something to do with the Absolute Solver, but I don't know that either. Freaking, I don't know. This show's weird. She puts the choker back on and flies towards the church. She enters through the main entrance and climbs along the walls until reaching the chandelier. She ganders over down to the pit, not seeing an end. She hears music from a workstation and makes her way down to it. She perks on the chair and looks at the anime posters on the wall. She turns off Nightcore Remix 13 and kicks over a plushy seated chair. She looks at the monitor and finds a freeze frame of the last thing the heart saw before making her way down to the mines. She rewinds to the beginning and presses play. We see her eyes widen as she watches what unfolds. N is still being dragged by the tentacle, trying to shoot his laser but isn't able to aim because of how violent it is. We see the tentacle is bringing N to a hole with hands on cables reaching out for him. N tries to fight being pulled in, but does so anyway. He's pulled down hallways of tissues and biomass until a pickaxe slashes down on the tentacle, cutting it in half. The heart from before then rushes back up to it and throws the USB crucifix at N's head. It then asks,
"Why sin after her own murder pet? You stupid or something?"
Oh yeah.
And it crawls on his head, satisfied by the answer and immediately telling him to run. He does so and runs back into the caves, shooting behind him. The tentacles break through the cave edge he made, while the heart says that he looks familiar and if he has wings. It directs him through the tunnels and asks if he can get it up to the surface, and that it is looking for a hunk named Khan, and then repeats the name, except saying Uzi's dead. The heart slams him around a sharp corner, having the tentacle thing pass by. After the distance is long enough to talk again, it asks how N knows its daughter. That's right, it's Nori. Big whoop! Moving on! Back outside, Thad and Lizzie hide behind a car outside of the spire. It is clear that they are going to try to fight Jay for whatever reason. But as they approach the spire, an explosion pushes them back and a fire has started within the spire. Inside, a pod is destroyed. Khan then comes out of nowhere and tells Part 2A to check the perimeter. He hands Thad a blueprint of Uzi's railgun and goes to excavate the wreckage. When Thad questions him, Khan says,
"Sir? Bad crowd, those murder drones. Destroying ways off the planet. My wife. My daughter having interests beyond cannibalism and Nightcore."
Gravity turns off again, but Khan seems to have handled this by now, and he does not react. He also finds a part of Uzi's railgun, or a replica at least. Khan tells them that it's the end times, and that if his wife's closet is right, the planet is going to eat them soon, and itself. Before Thad can question, the other drone gives a sign of don't worry about it, and he ends up going along with it. A locker opens up with a drone with wings inside and 2 magnets on its head. Another opens with a drone with the eldritch head we saw in episode 2. And a third one opens with nothing in it. It is closed by Tessa and we see the empty one is Nori's. Tessa walks to the end of the hall and finds a computer. She is presented with a bioinformatic challenge, or fingerprint bypass, and Tessa takes off her glove to use her own finger. This is the first time we actually see a living piece of a human. She passes the password and is presented with a database, most of which is corrupted or simply says no effect. These are drones. We know this because of the only 2 active ones, Nori and Yeva. Nori's status is in progress, while Yeva is the 2.1.8n patch. She then implements a self-destruct code and is given 3 seconds to leave. She walks calmly away as the system go kablooey. As Tessa admires her work, a butcher knife comes out of the shadows, which she catches. Doll appears and asks where the patch is. When Tessa tries to play dumb, Doll reiterates and says the patch used to exorcise the solver's possession. Tessa answers with an acknowledgement of that being what was going on in these caves. She then asks Doll if it looks like a crucifix. Doll answers her question with her own question. Wouldn't you know? Tessa had her suspicions, but her feed kept getting cut. She cuts off Doll's eye patch to reveal a bleeding hole. Doll explains that she will not let the Absolute Solver use her to destroy the planet. Tessa laughs and says that she isn't sure it needs her, while throwing a knife to knock Doll's out of her hand. Tessa disappears. Something uses the Absolute Solver to extinguish the fire. Something in the darkness down in the tunnel starts screeching, approaching Doll. She uses the Absolute Solver to try to light up the hallway, but it doesn't do much. Everything goes quiet as it would have reached her, until her footsteps start forming and approaching her instead. Something else with the Absolute Solver starts being detected on the walls. Doll throws a rock to try to hurt it, but it is cut in half and we see something not completely drone, not completely human, get Doll. We got back to when Nori thanks the intern for the new host. As she throws the USB, it stops in mid-air, shattering Chambers' mask. Yeva is behind him, and she plunges the USB into Nori's face. She pulls it out, tosses it behind her into the pit, and collapses to her knees. Chambers gives Yeva a thumbs up and runs off. Yeva offers her hand to Nori, but one is trying to form a black hole, while the other hand is trying to stop it from doing that. Yeva prepares a knife to cut it off, while Nori raises her absolute silver hand and then slices it off. It also falls into the pit. Yeva helps up Nori until the core collapses and the world grows a new butthole anyways. We then see that Nori was recapping her side of the events to N. N is, for some reason, pinned to the wall with a pickaxe. Nori explains that she woke up to the surface with a scrambled brain, got a kid, showed a picture Khan had earlier in the show. She then says the rest is history, showing a piece of paper she wrote that has a drawing of a murder drone with the text saying that it sent some things to eliminate other hosts, and that the entity of previous pages purged her memory files. N collapse, with Nori telling him to stop. She tells him the solver found a way back to finish its job. She asks who the new host is, to which N replies Uzi and Doll. Nori cuts off N, saying that Doll is Yeva's kid. Nori then asks which one of the two was just trying to eat them. Back at the church, Uzi watches the footage go to static. Her Vezir opens the absolute solver, the glass shatters, and she steps back, holding her eye. All the lights go out, light flashes, and a silhouette of Doll walks towards Uzi. Uzi struggles to take off the bracelet to look at it. As Doll struggles forward, her insides are pouring out of her. Uzi drops the bracelet. Doll slips on her own oil, and Uzi turns to look at her, to see her chest ripped open and her heart gone. Words on her visor say in Russian to fight back. Tessa then appears at the doorway, saying that someone has been busy. Nori tosses a USB at N's head and tells him to hurry. He is then freed from his axe prison, and he rushes off to tell Uzi about her mom. Nori stops him and says that if he tells her that Nori is alive, she will kill N, and apologizes to Nori, saying that she won't keep secrets from Uzi anymore, even if it might hurt her. Nori lets him go and explains that she caused every horror in her life. She then tries to tell N to promise not to tell Uzi. He then promises to wait until Nori is ready to tell Uzi herself. Nori rolls her eyes and tells him,
"Bite me."
Uzi stutters over her words, trying to tell Tessa she didn't do anything to Doll. Tessa pulls out her sword, getting ready to fight. A claw and wings spawn out of Uzi's back, pinning her to a pillar. She then tries to use her absolute solver on Tessa. She receives a message, however, saying that like objects are non-interactive. Tessa kicks Uzi's wing, making her fall, and cuts through it. She then takes her sword to Uzi's chest and begins applying pressure, beginning to penetrate Uzi. Tessa begins to make one final push under the sword before N's sword comes to Tessa's throat. N asks,
You knew about the patch, yes or no? One chance.
Tessa comments cute and moves the sword away, beginning to ask why she keeps N around, but N slices her throat. She walks limply backwards before collapsing and her head rolling away, leaving a trail of blood. N's sword drips with blood, and he uses it to support his suddenly weak knees. Uzi pulls out the sword and tosses it aside. She then reaches up and grabs the USB. N bends down and gives it to her, saying that it should help. He then says,
All I know is I need you to figure things out. Together?
He holds her hand and blushes a little bit, helping her up. Uzi starts giggling and starts crushing N's hand. She then uses the absolute solver to destroy the USB. Uzi finally looks up to say,
That's really sweet, big brother.
She tosses N to a pillar and pins him to it with a claw. Uzi says it's too bad that N has served his purpose and says not to worry as her backups will forgive her. She then pulls back another claw, aiming for a fatal blow to N. But before contact can be made, a pickaxe is thrown down and stops the attack. Nori uses it to slice off the claws into bits. Uzi then says that Nori is dead, which Nori fires back a "You're grounded," which Uzi replies with
Angry.
Uzi grows another clawed slash, with Nori then deflecting again and pulling them away from the pillar and into the sky. The pickaxe comes down into her head and N aims a laser at Uzi, but can't bring himself to fire as Uzi frowns and bleeds from the head. The absolute solver has found a weakness in N. Uzi rushes to N, impaling him and throwing him up to the roof. He slams on a wall and Uzi already meets him back up there, making the best scene in the entire show so far. With Nori pinned, N brings out his sword and goes for the neck, stopping just short of it. Uzi grabs it and starts making N cut down onto her throat, despite N's struggles against the force. N cuts off the arm holding her and slaps Uzi, eventually knocking her away. She turns and slaps N in trying to get him to snap out of it and realize the situation that they are in. Uzi regenerates her arm quickly and starts forming a large black hole above her. She sends smaller ones to try to attack N, making a hole in the wall they were just at. N flies up and dodges the black holes, closing in the ground between him and Uzi. Nori and N cut off Uzi's arm, disabling the main black hole and unleashing a series of quick and rapid attacks before throwing her back down inside the church. Uzi, however, starts hovering in place with her wings. Nori sends the pickaxe toward Uzi, aiming for the head. Uzi welcomes the upcoming blow and winks at N. N then throws Nori off of him and rushes over to push Uzi out of the way. As they look at each other, N gives Uzi a small smile, causing Uzi's eyes to glitch before taking the impact of the pick. Uzi grabs Nori and knocks her into a window with her own weapon. The pick is thrown and pins Nori to the window. Uzi comes down, laughing. She grabs Nori and throws the pick down at N's head, who narrowly moves out of the way. Uzi starts to place Nori between her jaws before N frantically calls out to Nori to tell her that N and Uzi hang out? Just kind of hanging out a lot. He writes this out in his own oil and decapitated arms. Uzi just says, "What?" while Nori uses Uzi's full name and tells her that those things ate her freaking mother, and then slaps Uzi so hard that she falls to the ground. Uzi then starts to glitch out in anger between the absolute solver and Uzi's voice. Uzi comes back before telling Nori that she doesn't own her and throws her down into the pit, much to N's horror. N yells that there was her mother and remembered he wasn't supposed to say anything, and soon they are both screaming at each other before falling silent and embracing each other. Uzi begins to shed tears as she holds tightly onto N. N rubs her head softly. Tessa's head has almost reached the pit, almost falling in when her foot comes down and stops it. Tessa picks up her head and swivels it back on before undressing her spacesuit. It comes down covered in blood, and a tentacle gently lowers the helmet. A stumbling, broken body walks forward toward N and Uzi. A tentacle grabs Doll and slides her towards the dead body. Uzi and N look back and see something eating Doll. Something that isn't completely drone or human is eating Doll's heart, slurping it up like spaghetti. We see a band noting that the drone inside the human suit was marked for disposal. Human hands are working on top of the drone hands, the body having tentacles and being able to move in inorganic ways. The creature laughs before saying,
"Get snuck upon."
It then crawls quickly on the floor towards the two drones, glitching in and out of movement before jumping up onto N. She begins consuming him quickly before Uzi can help. The creature stabs Uzi and takes N in the creature's mouth toward the pit. The creature says that it's been fun and that was sarcasm, and she throws N over to Uzi before saying that it was starving and jumping back into the pit. A bright yellow light emits from the pit and tentacles shoot up from within, the light shooting all the way up to the surface. Jay's pod comes down to the industrial site and calls on her transmuter that the ride is good to go. But before she can finish her sentence, a bus comes by and absolutely knocks the shit out of Jay, making her lose the keys within the massive hole. She pulls out her gun before asking who these idiots are. We see the shadows of Thad and Lizzie and the railgun powering up. One of the eyes on Jay's head sees this and sends a warning of prior hazard to Jay. Tentacles from the pit grab N and Uzi. N is knocked out. Uzi keeps trying to grab N, but does not succeed until stabbing her hand on some bones and grabbing him before he falls into the hole. N wakes up looking at the situation they find themselves in. More tentacles start to pull them in. Uzi starts to thank N until she notices the keys to the pod falling. She finishes her sentence with
Everything.
Before beginning to throw N out of the hole. N tries to demand Uzi to stop what she is doing, but it's too late. He is thrown out of the hole. Uzi breaks off the bone and jumps toward the keys. N gets the keys and looks at Uzi as tentacles begin to swarm her. Her eyes relay the message to die mad before using her solver to push N out of the cathedral, and Uzi is pulled into the pit. She bites off a tentacle and crosses her arms as she falls into the underground thunder. There's a flash of light until everything goes dark. In the darkness, something is bumping against a surface. Rocks are hitting against Uzi's head, waking her up, but she seems to be floating in nothing. As she opens her eyes, she sees that she is indeed floating, but in space. A massive hole in her planet below has formed, with giant bits being pushed up into space. End of the episode. This episode has no end credits music. So that was an insane episode. This was obviously beloved by fans, as the excitement for the end of the series had never been higher. While people were excited for the end, however, they naturally didn't want it to end. But what were you going to do? The story is almost over. I don't know if the creature is supposed to be Sin or the Solver, but I think it's Sin wearing Tessa, especially with all the references she has with N and how she seems to be more logical as a villain rather than just the program gaining its own sentience. The ending being in space was an excellent touch, and it left fans wondering how the last episode was actually going to go down. Many people knew that N and Uzi were going to fight, however. The twist was that it wasn't the actual end, it was only the beginning of it. After this episode, episode 2 of The Amazing Digital Circus was released. However, this didn't have as much of an impact on the Murder Drones community, because it no longer felt like Murder Drones was taking a backseat to the circus. However, there was another announcement that did affect the fanbase, if ever so slightly. The introduction of the Glitch Inn. The Glitch Inn is best described as a subscription service that is optional for fans to help support the show. Subscribers receive blog posts, access to a Discord, behind the scenes, and of course events such as art competitions and game nights. In June of 2024, a trailer was released for it. The beginning of the trailer featured M and Pomni from the Amazing Digital Circus, where they, mainly N, had a musical number giving the tour of the Glitch Inn. Obviously only to promote the Glitch Inn, the inclusion of N made people kind of want to go back and see the rest of the show, you know what I mean? By the way, a side tangent, I bought the Glitch Inn subscription, and I gotta say, it's actually pretty neat. Since it's still new, it's a little barren on things to see, but as time goes on, it's only going to get bigger, so I recommend spending only $10 a month on it, and if anything, you can cancel it before the next payment. I don't know, it's kind of cool. There was another announcement that impacted Glitch and the indie animation industry as a whole, the start of a new branch of Glitch, Final Project. This is mainly a merchandising company, with its current focus as of now on the Lackadaisy show. This doesn't affect their Murder Drones. I just wanted to bring it up to appreciate what Glitch has and is doing for the indie animation industry. Making dreams come true, the right way. The final trailer for Murder Drones as a show, and as of recording this, is the series finale trailer. It was released at the beginning of August, with the episode coming out in the late/middle of August as well. People were excited and sad that the end was coming, but hey, let's watch the trailer. A desktop turns on with the Murder Drones logo, and like the last trailer, it showed clips and voice lines from previous episodes to the desktop. When everything goes black, we see light tentacles climbing out of a giant hole in the ground. Sin closing her fingers like a pair of scissors and winking as the light goes out. Uzi standing in an empty hallway with oil on her face. Nori's closet with pictures and papers flying through the air. Jay readying her gun. A pod going into the middle of the light tentacle source that is seen from space. Uzi falling back into the planet's atmosphere and catching fire. Uzi using her tail to ready the railgun. Sin in a hallway using her tentacles to fill it and smash the lights. Jay readying her gun again. A claw rising for an attack. Sin jumping from a railing. Sin dodging a missile. Several clips of N and Uzi looking distraught. Sin leaping for Uzi. Khan. A pod flying through the asteroid rings surrounding the planet. And then the words, everything ends. Alright. Before we get to the series finale, I have to ask you guys to do something for me, unfortunately. I need you guys to go watch it yourselves. I know. You either have probably already seen it, or you just don't have the energy to click off and quickly search up Murder Drones on YouTube, search bars. Yeah, it takes too much. Whatever, stupid excuse you got. It doesn't matter. This episode shakes the foundation of what I consider to be an animated masterpiece. I've seen things in this episode that I've never seen in any other animated show. Like, what goes down in this episode rivals with, like, live action finales. No joke. So, if you could be ever so kind, please watch it for yourself. For another time at least. Afterwards, you can come back, because it is going to pain me ever so much to have to talk over any bit of this episode. So, assuming you already watched it, and skip back to this part, I present to you Absolute End. Buckle up, Buttercup. Space. Copper 9. A desolate city where no life is found. An explosion in the distance, and then a shockwave shatters a window shield to a car. The radio spamming through multiple radio stations until stopping at null. Snowflakes start to rise rather than fall, and we see Doll's House go through the same physics change, with bugs scrambling for a solid object to walk on. Nori's closet has her pictures and scribblings drifting in the air. Dead bodies of drones and various other objects around them rise. The lake at Cabin Fever starts cracking like glass. The teacher is giving an A- to Uzi's essay titled Dumb's Essay Stupid, saying her thesis is strong and she had effective syntax. He comments on her introductory paragraph even though it seems like she just repeated the phrase I am God over and over. His radio starts going to static as he sees his entire room is undergoing the effects of anti-gravity. He has one of those best teacher mugs and also a how-to guide of overcoming the existential dread evoked by murdering innocent sentient robots capable of emotion and independent thought. This book prides itself with J.C. Jensen employees' testimonials, thought-provoking analysis, and benefits of being the apex predator, and philosophical advice regarding shutting up and whether you want a job or not. Everything slams to the ground and the lights go out as if it seems like the room is now falling. The teacher lays on his desks and moves his hands in a way and why do anything way. Out the window we see stars. Did I say we were falling? We're actually rising. Everything goes back to floating in the air. The teacher throws his pen in his cup and opens the door to look outside. He looks down to see a massive yellow crater of light on Copper 9, directly where he supposedly came from. We zoom down to see a tiny black hole with text appearing before it. It's surrounded by the weird crab tentacle robots. Eventually, it says bleh and begins a process titled mat collection, or matter collection. The black hole folds into itself, and light tentacles erupt from the planet and start grabbing the various giant rocks that it had erupted from the surface. The teacher watches this happen, and a light tentacle comes up to him and slaps him, which does not have much of an effect on him. It begins pulling him down to the surface. Uzi sees all of this happening from her own little spot in space. She begins flailing wildly as she tries to gain a control of balance, and we get an amazing visual of Copper 9's ring. A rock moves over and stops Uzi, having been moved by an absolute solver given off by her mom. She looks around to see who did that. By the way, every time we are in space, there is no sound. It's epic. We see her mom jumping from rock to rock as she makes her way toward Uzi. Nori writes on a rock saying whoops and pointing to the massive problem behind her and shrugs. Uzi asks how to stop it and Nori asks about the patch. Uzi embarrassingly says that she broke it and asks if the solver will take control of her again. Uzi embarrassingly says she broke it and asks if the solver will control her again. Nori then throws Uzi her bracelet or choker and says on a rock, "If you a little bitch," but is bleeped out with parental advisory. Uzi laughs silently and puts on the bracelet and choker. Nori and Uzi then wave to each other, acknowledging their familial relationship for the first time. Nori tells Uzi that the Absolute Solver needs a host and to destroy Sin's heart. Also, she grabs her pickaxe, an MP3 player, and headphones. Nori then throws her the pickaxe before a pod hits Uzi and drags her away, throwing Nori away as well. She and her pickaxe start falling back toward Copper 9. Uzi grabs onto the side when a door from inside opens and a tail comes out and brings her in. As the door closes and Uzi stands back up, by the way, the sun is back even in the pod, so crazy, N turns around from the pilot chair to pronounce
Spaceship Pilot!
Uzi throws something at N and he spins around, causing all the computers to go haywire, and he struggles to bring things back together as Uzi walks up to him and tells him her mom was back there. We can see Uzi go from mad to almost tearing up as she does this, by the way. She then grabs N for a hug and Uzi tells him that he was supposed to get away. N replies that he's actually mad by what Uzi did, but that they can talk later as the pod starts going crazy again, and we see it dodge around several space rocks. After the craziness, N and Uzi readjust themselves. They look at each other with understanding, and Uzi starts to laugh, telling N, or someone else, I don't know, to
Then die mad, bitch!
And the power is cut out and the pod is broken open by the light tentacles. A message from Sin appears telling them to stop, smiley face. They each say something inaudible before the pod is torn apart. Both Uzi and N start to fall back to Copper 9, and we see this fucking masterpiece, holy sh*. As they start to turn into balls of fire, they each reach out to each other and grab their hands, their own voices beginning to be audible as they go back into the atmosphere of the planet. They look down, and Uzi says that this is a serious issue before looking back at N and stumbling through a question of whether or not they are dating.
We're, like, dating, right?
Oh, yeah.
Just
like
because I
that
can't always,
was the
I
plan.
can't always
Yeah,
read.
Like, yeah.
Yay.
And they hug each other and turn into one giant fireball until Uzi pushes him away and says gross and that they have a planet to murder. On a swirling rock headed into space, we see Jay sitting, looking annoyed as she holds an IOU-1 spaceship from N. Very convenient. We see the light tentacle throw one down nearby, completing the IOU while also destroying the pod. Jay sarcastically congratulates the tentacle as it pats the destroyed ship and shrinks away. However, something else slams into the rock. A bus holding Khan, Lizzie, and Thad, who is each reaching for the railgun. They're also sliding toward the edge of the rock through the absolute pressure they are being subjected to. Khan and the bus nod to each other. Jay then says that she needs to go down into the scary planet hole thing and begins to fly off. But when she jumps off the ground, she is thrusted back down into the rock, also through sheer pressure. And she starts releasing her anger of the situation by firing a missile at the two kids and Khan. The Centennial with red eyes appears, however, and knocks it up where V kicks it back toward Jay. It explodes behind her, and they both stare daggers at each other. The force of the missile stops the rock from spinning so fast, releasing the pressure, letting the drones be able to stand up properly. The red Sentinel, with V riding it, then rushes towards Jay, who starts firing. The Sentinel coughs up a disassembly drone arm and releases the laser, which Jay dodges. When she looks back and V is gone, she snuck up behind Jay and called her on. Jay begins to correct her before being kicked in the face so hard she is fired off the rock and onto a nearby one. As she lands, V is already back, calling Jay out for working with Sin. They begin having an air battle while the other drones kind of sit around not knowing what to do. We see that Lizzie has been keeping contact with V and has been her secret friend from the previous episode. She also helped V find Jay. She begins sending a message about the ship being car-bombed when the Centennial walks up to her and starts slamming her onto the ground. Thad reels back the railgun to hit the Centennial, but Jay is sent into the rock, throwing everyone up into space. Livesey waves away the Centennial, but it coughs up a fire extinguisher and pops a hole, pushing it toward them, much to their horror. V and Jay are now sword on the rock. V says that they were supposed to get away, that they were supposed to do their jobs and leave them alone. Jay tosses V and tells her to grow up. She tells V that it tricked her and says that if Jay promised V anything, that she was tricking herself as well. She fires a missile at V, which she deflects. They trade blows as Jay tells V there is no escape, even in death. Jay cuts off V's foot and disables her momentarily. Jay lends out an empty hand, telling V it's better on the winning team, and offers V to join her. V grabs her hand, tells her to bite me, and blows off Jay's hand. Before they can do any more fighting, a bright light distracts them both as Uzi and N fall down. Uzi tells Sin to as N throws Uzi forward and she tosses a black hole toward the planet, causing whatever the hell this is. This stops the light tentacles though, and Jay and V look at each other for a second to comment on that thing that just happened before returning to their fight. Uzi and N then continue the rest of their fall to the ground, passing through the tentacles and landing stylishly on a platform, with sunglasses donned on them. A red light and a roar knock them off balance, however, and we see tentacles try to break through the lost connection. Sin then rises up to the platform the heroes are on and holds the black hole that Uzi had thrown down. She does a cool trick telling Uzi she dropped it and crushes it in her hand. Doing so allows the tentacles to keep pulling things back inward. Sin walks off her own tentacle onto their platform, her body barely able to hold itself together. She begrudgingly says hi to Uzi, but excitedly says hi to N. Uzi brings out her solver while N brings out his gun and shakes his head. Sin says that N won't talk to her because she has hurt his feelings. The platform begins to fill with fog as Uzi looks up at N and sees that he's actually trembling in fear. Sin states that it is easier to assimilate than explain anyways, and grows more limbs before executing a callback ping. This causes Uzi to glitch and try to fight off the Absolute Solver's influence that Sin is trying to regain. Uzi tells Sin that she can bite me as she looks at N to reassure him. Sin quickly slaps N away before lunging towards Uzi and replying,
Okay.
She cuts off her hand and covers her mouth as Sin makes her way behind Uzi. She then rips out her heart and Uzi's body goes under a fatal error. As Uzi's heart fully rips off her body, it gains Uzi sentience and looks down at Sin, who is enjoying this greatly. Uzi is not in love with this. And then yells and jumps in, trying to get Sin away from Uzi. Uzi's body comes back, but she is struggling to pull her fucking heart back into her body. This is so fucking hardcore! Sin and N trade a maximum of 2 blows before N is pulled towards Sin. She pins him down and pulls off both of his arms. She says that he is first now, Eager Beaver, and repeats the phrase, "Let me in," as she scratches into his chest, beginning to dig in, and N's vision starts going static. Uzi looks over and sees N's head is ripped off as Sin starts consuming him. Uzi uses her Absolute Solver to move the platform below them away, dropping herself and N further down. Sin simply grows wings and lets herself hover over them before diving down to catch them. Uzi continues to throw herself and N from platform to platform, with Sin closing in on them. As Sin crawls over a ledge, she sees Uzi drag N into a building. She loves this game of cat and mouse and quickly swoops in to find her prey. Meanwhile, just outside of the building, V and J are still fighting. J comments on V's seemingly loss of skill and viciousness since on Earth. With V thrown into a wall, J comments that she never needed either of them and points her missile launcher at V before firing. Inside the building, it shakes from the impact as Uzi holds her chest and drags N down a hallway. Sin, however, is much faster than them and catches up almost immediately, slamming into a wall only to find an empty hallway. Her eyes scan the room. She elects one for some reason.
Leg.
And she grows like 20 hands to crush the lights and makes her way down the room from the walls, floor, and ceiling. As they make their way forward, Sin releases her callback ping to try to reconnect to Uzi and makes the Absolute Solver take over her once more. A hand flies over and crawls around a bar, where we see Uzi and N hiding behind a wall. More hands start to fly through the wall, beginning to surround them. Uzi looks at N, who is having a panic attack over memories returning to him of Sin back at the mansion, eating him alive, along with V. Uzi tries to help, but the callback ping finally reaches her, and she starts glitching out, once again fighting for control. She sees her chest opening up, and she grabs N's hand. He wakes up from his panic and looks at Uzi, who is showing him that she is in control of herself, not the Absolute Solver. They smile and look at each other until Sin is further away. Something has broken into the hallway, however, and the hands, as well as Sin, immediately rush back to where the two are. There's coughing as we hear V call for N. She then calls out asking if he is okay, even though she doesn't see him. She then explains that Tessa was Sin and that she is here. N debates in his head what he needs to do. Before he calls out to her, Uzi puts a hand over his mouth and questions whether or not it's a trap. V tells N that she doesn't know how much he remembers, but that J tricked them, or that Sin tricked J. V looks down the hallway and sees N standing there, looking at her. V starts to well up in tears as she apologizes to him.
I'm so sorry.
Yells as loud as he can for V to stop. Immediately, a hand breaks through his chest and grabs his heart, pulling him and his heart out of the wall. V gasps as she finally sees the real him and Sin. Sin tells V to do her job, and she leaves her and N alone, recounting the previous conversation they had. V starts to bargain with Sin, beginning to say that she can still do something before Sin cuts her off and snips her fingers. The lights cut and Sin starts rushing towards V, who cuts off a bunch of hands and flies out of the hole in the wall. Uzi then walks out of the hole, alone. V runs out of the door and begins to take off to the air before Jay kicks her back down into the ground, and is thrown down next to her with his chest open and heart missing. Jay flies down to the ground and Sin walks out of the building, giggling and holding N's heart. V panics as Sin prepares to eat N before a door slams down behind her, cutting off some of her extra limbs and loosening her grip on N enough for him to get away. It jumps back into N's chest. Sin has some harsh words to say about this development.
God fucked.
She looks up to see Khan laughing at her face with the door key in hand. Thad throws a ray gun for Uzi with the Centennial gnawing on Uzi's head. Sin rolls her eyes before stepping into a railing and jumping over next to Jay, saying Uzi is not here. Light tentacles then thrust from the ground and grab onto the building Uzi is in, and it quickly sinks into the ground. Sin grows a claw and lunges at V, but before she can make a stab, the claw is cut off. Uzi is there with her wings, saying, "Hands off," and nobody traumatizes the weird hot robots except for her. She then mumbles over to Jay, saying she is glad she isn't dead or whatever, but she looks back and gives a genuine smile, which V returns with her own and a nod. Sin interrupts, saying boring and annoying. She slaps a callback ping back up, but Uzi immediately shuts it down, which throws off Sin. Uzi says,
Sorry, just me in here. I think dumb things are frickin' cool, and
as she grabs the pickaxe from the sky, and Nori calls to kick Sin's butt and cheers her on. The ray gun is caught by Uzi's tail, cocked and aimed at Sin and Uzi. Jay once again gets the prior hazard warning as Sin simply says,
Okay.
The MP3 player lands next to Sin, playing Nightcar Remix 93 on full volume. This song is called Bite Me, made by AJ Desperado and sung by Zephyrina. Sin and Uzi both prepare black holes and throw them at each other, causing them to swirl and shoot in opposite directions, exploding into larger ones in different areas of the world. This causes the wind to stir wildly, because Jay and Sin go back to back, until a ray gun is shot from far away, almost hitting Jay's head, but just making her hair. Before Jay can counterattack, the gun is thrown at her head, knocking her down. Sin looks around, Uzi coming from behind with her pickaxe and having them exchange blows. Sin grows an extra claw, which does absolutely nothing. Uzi cuts it off, nicking Sin's face, which also gets kicked and having her knocked away. She quickly recovers, however, and tosses the sword at Jay, who is holding the ray gun. She waves as she is decapitated by the gun, and her head is knocked by Uzi, who caught the gun, over to Sin. Sin moves out of the way and catches the sword she threw before glitching out and starts teleporting around Uzi rapidly. She appears behind her and goes for a blow, but Uzi dodges and goes for her chest. Right before impact, she dissipates into N, who collapses onto his knees. He reaches up toward Uzi, who almost reciprocates until V comes from above and stops Jay from making an invisible hit onto Uzi, with N coming in from the side as well. V tells Jay,
Wrong team. No more tricks.
V shoots off Jay while N cuts off the fake N arm and pulls Uzi away. Jay falls down into a dark, deep hole. V, N, and Uzi then regroup by the said hole, watching fake N dematerialize into Sin. N tells Uzi that he thinks they need a secret handshake. V cringes at this while Uzi appreciates the light-hearted suggestion. They all look back towards Sin and prepares to attack. Sin throws back over the pickaxe, which Uzi catches, and she runs toward her. V shoots missiles from above towards Sin. She deflects them and dodges another shot from below. N kicks it back, however, causing Sin to try to dodge again. N rushes forward and decapitates Sin, who reaches out and places her head back on top of her shoulders. N goes in for another attack, but Sin dodges this time, and a missile in hand. V shoots an onslaught of bullets towards Sin, who fires the missiles back at her. N starts to fire instead, and they fight into smoke until they fly out, with N becoming slightly distracted by Sin, showing him puppy dog eyes. She takes the opportunity to stab him, but he instead winks at her as Uzi comes from behind and once again decapitates Sin. As N and Uzi salute each other, a claw pins Uzi on the ground and Sin dematerializes from in front of N to show she is really above Uzi with the sword. Before Sin can make her blow, however, V dive bombs into Sin, side-eyeing Uzi, which she rolls her eyes. N catches Sin and throws her into the air, where V catches her and throws her off to the side where they fight in the background of N and Uzi working on a handshake. Sin pins V on a wall of rocks, but before she can take a bite, Uzi uppercuts and kicks her to N, who slices her as she slides down to the ground. The three stand together and N and Uzi perform the handshake. A claw comes in and swipes N and Uzi away, however, and knocks Uzi backwards onto an overhanging steel pillar. As she tries again to regain balance, Sin lunges for her. Uzi sees that this one is fake and instead turns around and reaches her hand forward into Sin's chest. The music stops as Uzi opens her eyes and sees what has just happened. Sin is still as she looks down at her chest, where Uzi grabs her heart and rips it out. She then uses the absolute solver to magnify the sun's light and burn up Sin's heat to where what only remains is the core in Uzi's burning up hand. The core then expands to consume both Sin and Uzi, expunging blood around it as it does. The area around the core goes monochrome, and the snowflakes stop falling. N and V stand up and watch the giant core unsure of their next steps. Inside the core, the final part of Sin is beating in Uzi's hand. Sin is melting but stumbling over to Uzi, trying to get her to let go of it. When she fails, she grabs her arm and pulls it toward her mouth to consume her core. Without knowing what to do, Uzi yanks it away from Sin and eats it herself. The giant core shrinks back into Uzi, and they can now be seen. Sin stands frozen as Uzi collapses onto the steel beam. Time flows naturally once again, with Sin going limp and melting through the beam and into the depths below. Uzi feels ill as the oil and blood start to rise up rather than fall. Uzi's face glitching. N and V try to get to her before she blacks out. Uzi's visor says fatal error. It's raining. Her wings are out as well as tentacles. A ring of blood is around her. Everything sucks up together and Uzi starts coughing up blood. Uzi looks around the deformed landscape. Thad climbs out of a hole, kick-flipping a skateboard. Lizzie struggles to get out. Thad offering his hand, but Lizzie snapping a pic of herself before slipping and dropping her phone, Thad catching her. The phone hits Khan, who is also climbing, but the impact makes him start slipping before Nori's absolute solver catches him and brings him up. Khan looks up to see Nori, unable to recognize her. Nori shakes and yells,
You don't know me and I hate you!
Khan thinks on this interaction before coming to the conclusion that it was kinda hot, and the teacher who was climbing lets go and lets himself slide back down the ravine. The bus survived, as well as the Centennial, who starts chasing the drones. N and V take to the skies. N perches on a tree and calls for Uzi before spotting her and running up to her in glee. While N does her whole jealous thing or whatever, V slaps N, who lets Uzi down. When V finally looks at her, she tells N to stand back and aims her gun at Uzi. Uzi has yellow and purple eyes. She bats away V's gun, who points it back at her. She then looks at N's visor to see what has happened. N starts to ask if she is alright before Uzi exclaims that she is a damaged OC. V and N celebrate in their own ways that it's still Uzi. N picking her up and hugging her. Uzi then jumps onto V, punching her softly. Everything pauses and we zoom out to see V is stinky, heh heh heh. .mp4 was playing. Uzi slides in saying that that's how she learned nightmares were real, bringing up some art she drew, and how everybody should have probably stayed behind the old doors. Khan cheers from behind the classroom door as the teacher bangs his head on the desk. Uzi crushes the door. She follows up with maybe she doesn't hate it in the colony as much. The class claps nervously as N cheers and exclaims that
That's my girlfriend!
V and Lizzie boo Uzi. Doll is still dead somewhere on the planet. V throws a drone's head at Uzi. A paper airplane hits V, and she opens it to see an amateur manga drawing. She looks up to see N is learning to draw manga from a book. Lizzie cringes at this while V smiles. Uzi smiles from the front of the room before exclaiming that she can also do this.
Also, now I can do this!
The end credits show various visuals to how the current state of the world is and some callbacks to previous episodes. The first is Copper 9 with the Absolute Solver engraved on its surface, a spiral tower, Jay working on a pod, the outside of door 1, the inside of door 1 cracked open, and an Uzi playing cards with some drones including Kong and Nori, Doll in the hallway, a crazed scribbling paper, and an Uzi watching something in Uzi's room from a dead drone on the floor, and an Uzi watching something in Uzi's room with a dead drone on the floor, the show in question, which seems like a scene from the pilot episode, but they are humans, and also N is saying, "Whoa, horrors, pog in chat." Doll's house, a funeral for Doll, where everyone but Lucy doesn't seem to want to be there. The zombie drone's VHS, a rooftop with strung up lights. V playing chess with the Centennial while Lizzie is on her phone on said rooftop, and N and Uzi flying in the sky. By the way, V is losing at the chess game. A snowball fight between Lizzie and V versus N, Thad, and Uzi, and V is taking out her gun. A vending machine where Jay killed a ton of people in Eldritch. Cryo sleep where we see Eldritch J. Finally, we see Uzi opening up her locker in an empty hallway listening to the end credits song on her headphones. She looks to see if anyone is around. She is visibly tired. A mirror in her locker is cracked and she sees herself glitch out as a hologram would have. She takes off her headphones and takes a closer look before Sin tells her that she looks great through her tail. She then asks Uzi if she has considered a bow. Uzi simply slams the door shut. The final scene before the end of the show is text saying, "K, thanks, bye." The end. Wow. What a series. Surprisingly, the reactions to the endings are seeing as the finale came out about a month ago now. Very varied. Some people loved the ending, myself included. Many thought it left a lot of loose ends and that it was rushed. One of the biggest hopes was that there would be a season 2. However, there has been no sign since the release of the finale that there will be one, with voice actors saying that they haven't heard anything about it, and Glitch not coming out and saying there will be one. There will, however, be more N and Uzi content in the future. Nobody really knows what this means yet, but fans are still excited nonetheless. Now, it is time for my super awesome segment where I rank all the episodes based on my preference from 8 to 1, 8 being the worst and 1 being the best. I want to preface by saying that I love all the episodes and that just because they may rank low doesn't mean I don't like it. They just aren't my favorites of the bunch. On 8, we have episode 5, Home. While this was an amazing lore episode, having Uzi as an animal sidekick really kind of knocks it down off its feet. However, it's still a rock solid episode. On 7, we have episode 2, Heartbeat. Unfortunately, this entire episode just feels like a build-up to reveal Eldritch J. Having more story to put in it, or at least character development to help us get more attached to some characters would have helped. However, the entire Eldritch J concept and having the episode end on a pretty heavy note almost completely makes up for it. On 6, we got episode 4, Cabin Fever. This episode was, and probably will, frustrate me. The way killing drones is passed off as a joke is overplayed in this episode. However, having Uzi become consumed by the Absolute Solver and start fighting V made it worth it. Additionally, we got the first episode where N starts to lose it, so that also adds some salt onto the pie. On 5, we have the pilot episode. This episode doesn't really have any complaints for me. It's a solid episode that sets up the characters, conflict, and goals for the characters. A good episode. On 4, we have the promenading. This episode was just kind of a fun ride through what could be considered a TV show trope of prom night, kind of twisted into robots and murder. This episode is what got people to realize that this show is actually kind of good, and also made some more of the more iconic scenes and quotes from the show. At number 3 is episode 6. This introduced the first real threat to the murder drones, in my opinion, of Centennials, and also had a main character death for the first time. Some say it was cheap to kill off V, but I don't know. I love when they kill off characters for at least an episode, especially if the reactions to the people in the show are crazy. This episode is something I could watch and continuously be amazed with the story and concepts introduced in it. In number 2, we have episode 7. This episode I could rewatch over and over again. The fight between N and Uzi was amazing, and Nori was a great character. The rest of the story is explained to us in this episode, and also keeps your attention with some epic fighting and horror. Then, obviously, at number 1 is episode 8. Everything I said about the last episode, episode 7, applies to this one, but times 10. This episode shows animation at lengths I've never seen before. The voice acting has passion behind the words that I never would have heard in a mainline movie or show these days. And the sound effects made the show sound real. All in all, the best episode of a show I have ever seen, let alone a finale. This episode competes with live action episodes of TV shows. That's my ranking. Here's a version of it to screenshot and yell at me for. Moving on. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I have spent countless days on it, as I am sure everyone says, but you know what? Screw you. This is my first big project that I've worked on. Before this, I made a music video that you can watch if you want, but that took me only like 12 hours to do. This took me way more than that. But I do have plans for other projects, such as a theory / lore like idea about Ninja Sex Party and Danny and Ninja Brian, or I don't know. I got ideas, and it'll come. To show support for murder drones, the biggest thing you can do is just watch it and spread the love. If you want to give more to the creators, buy the merch or even sign up for the Glitch Inn, where there's more Murder Drones content with behind the scenes, concept art, and other fun stuff like that. If you want to support me, then watch my videos. I only got like 2 recent ones that are actually good, but I don't know, man. Also, I'm on another channel called Beyond the Norm, where I play games and stuff with my friend Landry. Watch that and sub to that. Anyway, I'm done talking now, I guess. So thanks for watching, and I don't know. We'll see where we find ourselves next time. Bye-bye.
Wow, that was a long video I made. Yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna drink this radiator fluid now. What do you mean I drank it all already?